Chapter 391. Chu Fengmian condensed the battle dragon's claw at a frightening speed. His battle dragon's claw came from the power of his bloodline, and it was condensed in an instant. The young man's five-will secret technique was shattered by Chu Fengmian's battle dragon's claw before it could unleash its power. The power of the backlash caused the young man to involuntarily spit out a large mouthful of blood essence. His eyes were filled with shock, as if he had never thought that he would be defeated. He was an invincible figure in the North Sea Academy, and he was ranked among the top in the North Sea Academy, with an extremely high status. The five-will secret technique was famous in the North Sea Academy, but he never thought that he would be defeated by someone in the remote Wushan country. Despicable brat, you dare to break my five-will secret technique, you're dead. Anyone who dares to oppose me will die. The young man roared, and suddenly, the power that burst out from his body became even stronger. North Sea Force. Bless my body. There seemed to be a seed within his body that had suddenly shattered. As this seed shattered, an endless amount of power poured into the young man's body. His strength rose steadily, and he was more than twice as strong as before. All of a sudden, the young man threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. Oh! This is a secret technique that I have never seen before. Chu Fengmian was slightly surprised when he saw the young man's transformation. He was a figure from 10,000 years ago, and he knew about secret techniques from countless years ago. However, Chu Fengmian had never seen the young man's technique before, and it seemed to be a unique secret technique of the North Sea Academy. There was something unique about this move. Despicable brat. You forced me to use the power of the Saint Seed. Today, I will kill you and turn your bones into ashes. The young man furiously roared. Suddenly, the entire sky was plunged into darkness. This was his domain, the domain of endless darkness. In this endless darkness, there seemed to be countless living beings living in it. Seal! Following the young man's angry roar, countless chains suddenly appeared in the surrounding darkness. One after another, they moved toward Chu Fengmian to seal him up. Chu Fengmian couldn't use his power. Sacred Spear. The young man waved his hand and a long spear was condensed. This long spear was condensed from the spiritual energy in his body. It looked like the shadow of a spiritual weapon. The shadow of a heaven-grade spiritual weapon? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man's sacred spear and sneered in his heart. He waved his hand, and a stone tablet appeared in his hand. Break! The power of the boundless lush steel was pushed to its limits. Given Chu Fengmian's current strength, he was able to draw on the full power of the boundless lush steel. As soon as the richly lush tombstone appeared, boundless spiritual energy came crashing down on the young man, shattering his holy spear. A heaven-grade spiritual weapon? Seeing the rich lush steel in Chu Fengmian's hand, the young man's eyes were filled with disbelief. He didn't even have a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. It was extremely rare in the North Sea Academy, and only a few powerful elders had one. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to have a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. The power of the richly lush tombstone didn't just shatter the holy spear. It also broke the countless chains that bound Chu Fengmian, freeing him from the chains. Your current strength should come from the seed in your body, right? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man and shouted coldly. Seize! A ball of spiritual energy formed, and it turned into an arm that grabbed at the young man. He wanted to grab the seed and investigate it. The North Sea Academy was a new power in the last 10,000 years, and Chu Fengmian didn't know anything about it. Now, he wanted to see the North Sea Academy's techniques from the seed. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll win every battle. Don't even think about it. How dare you seize the sacred seed? This is blasphemy to the North Sea Academy. Despicable brat. You will be hunted down endlessly by the North Sea Academy. The young man looked at Chu Fengmian's actions, and his face changed greatly, and he threatened loudly. Shut up. Chu Fengmian's cold eyes narrowed, and he slapped the young man's face. Slap. The crisp sound caused the scene to become incomparably silent, and everyone's face was filled with extreme fear. Chu Fengmian actually dared to hit the young man, who was the envoy of the North Sea Academy. This slap wasn't just to his face, it was to the North Sea Academy's face. "Little bastard! You dare to hit me!" The young man was stunned, and then his anger exploded. No one had ever dared to slap him, and this was a supreme humiliation to him, causing him to be extremely angry. "So what if I hit you?" Chu Fengmian tilted his head, and another slap landed on the other side of the young man's face, causing it to swell up like a pig's head. "Not only will I hit you. Today, I will subdue you. Kneel down for me." Chu Fengmian coldly shouted, and the dragon's aura of the war dragon completely burst out, oppressing the young man's body. The endless pressure pressed down on the young man's body, causing his face to turn red, and even slightly purple. He activated all of his spiritual energy to resist Chu Fengmian's pressure. Damn it! This young master is an inner disciple of the North Sea Academy, and is about to be promoted to an elite disciple. My status is high, and my bloodline is incomparably noble. Why would I kneel down to you, a wild brat from a broken country? The young man shouted angrily. "I will never be defeated." On the young man's body, there was a burst of power from the depths of his body, vaguely contending with Chu Fengmian's dragon's aura of the war dragon. "Oh? It seems that this kind of power is the source of your current strength. Well, strip it. Let's see how you can resist." Chu Fengmian sneered. Naturally, he could see that the young man had already lost his strength, and was struggling to support himself with the power of the saint seed in his body. This saint seed seemed to be planted in his body by an almighty, and it provided him with an endless supply of power. Now, Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and directly grabbed the young man, wanting to strip the saint seed hidden in his body. Chapter 392. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy drilled into the young man's body. Suddenly, the saint seed seemed to have sensed danger. Waves of spiritual energy burst out, trying to expel Chu Fengmian's power. "A little power seed wants to compete with me? Creation power. Suppress it. Take it away." The power of the saint seed was actually able to compete with the dragon might of the ancient war dragon, which surprised Chu Fengmian. However, he made a prompt decision and burst out another wave of spiritual energy. This was the creation power from his sword embryo. The creation power was the most powerful force in the world. It was even more powerful than the ancient war dragon's power. As soon as the power of creation was unleashed, any resistance from the sacred seed was rendered meaningless. It was immediately stripped from the young man's body. Ah! The young man screamed as if all the strength in his body had been drained. At the same time, Chu Fengmian held a golden power seed the size of a thumb in his hand. "Let's see what kind of wonderful thing this saint seed is." Chu Fengmian's palm moved slightly. Sword essence condensed and turned into a sky-devouring divine python, swallowing the saint seed. In an instant, Chu Fengmian understood everything about the saint seed. This saint seed is actually a chaos seed. It contains the chaos power of the broken chaos. It seems that the owner of this seed is a warrior with the chaos divine body. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. The chaos power was the power that was born from the first broken chaos. It was at the peak of countless powers. In terms of strength, it was even stronger than the ancient war dragon's power. The chaos divine body was also one of the innate body constitutions. However, compared to Hanyu Li's profound cold body and Tianyin's profound transformation body, it was much more mysterious. It was one of the top 10 super divine bodies among the countless divine bodies. Having the chaos divine body was enough to comprehend the chaos power. Such an expert with the chaos divine body was extremely rare in ancient times. However, every one of them was a famous super expert. They were extremely powerful. After all, an ancient martial art practitioner who possessed chaotic power would vaguely surpass all other ancient martial art practitioners. It was just like how Chu Fengmian possessed the ancient war dragon bloodline, which was much more powerful than ordinary ancient martial art practitioners. An ancient martial art practitioner who possessed the power of chaos was even more terrifying than Chu Fengmian's ancient war dragon bloodline. There was actually such a person in the Northern Sea Academy. This caused Chu Fengmian to be greatly shocked. Bang! As soon as the saint seed was taken away, the young man lost his source of power. He could no longer resist Chu Fengmian's power and fell to his knees. Heavenly Death Seal. Suppress. Chu Fengmian glanced at the young man and immediately made his move. He condensed the Heavenly Death Seal, which turned into a black spiritual power and penetrated deep into the young man's heart. Chu Fengmian still wasn't clear about the Biming Academy's matters. Now, he had to spare this young man's life to figure out the Biming Academy's problems. Release the Divine Envoy now. Chu Fengmian, are you crazy? How dare you make an enemy out of the Divine Envoy? Seeing the young man kneeling on the ground, everyone was stunned. Lei Che roared loudly. This young man was the Biming Academy's envoy. If something happened to him, they would be held responsible. Lei Che? I haven't dealt with you yet, but you jumped out on your own. Looks like you're the one who leaked the Biming Saint tablet. Alright, I'll kill you first. Chu Fengmian glanced at Lei Che and couldn't help but snort. Not many people knew that he possessed the Biming Saint tablet. With Lei Che's position as the Dean of the Martial Victory Academy, it was only possible for him to know about it. He could tell who the person who leaked the secret was with just a glance. He brought such a big trouble to Chu Fengmian for no reason. If Chu Fengmian didn't return in time and allowed this young man to capture Hanueli, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lei Che would be the one to bear all the blame for all of this. Die! Chu Fengmian showed no mercy as he blasted out a palm. He wanted to kill Lei Che with all his might. Last time, Chu Fengmian had let Lei Che off because of Saint Shui Mo. However, this time, Lei Che had once again provoked Chu Fengmian. No one would be able to save him now. Even if Saint Shui Mo were to come, it would be meaningless. In front of Chu Fengmian, even a peak saint would be crushed to death. Brat, how dare you! Before Lei Che could finish his words, Chu Fengmian's palm fell. Lei Che's body instantly shattered under Chu Fengmian's palm. The Dean of the Martial Victory Academy died in Chu Fengmian's hands. And you guys, you dare to besiege the Cold Snow Pavilion. Today, all of you will die. Chu Fengmian's cold gaze swept across the others. These people had participated in the siege of the Cold Snow Pavilion. They were all Chu Fengmian's enemies. Brat, do you really think you're invincible? You want to kill all of us? Are you trying to make all of us your enemy? A saint from the Candle Flame sect stood out and shouted at Chu Fengmian. He had inherited Yan Mang's position and was the new sect master of the Candle Flame sect. Today's matter is our fault. This time, we will give you a big gift to apologize. After the sect master of the Candle Flame sect threatened, he slowly opened his mouth to calm Chu Fengmian's anger. On one hand, he wanted to show his strength. On the other hand, he wanted Chu Fengmian to take a step back. That's right, Chu Fengmian. You're very powerful now, but you can't fight against the three major sects alone. Moreover, the Martial Victory Academy is also your enemy. Another saint, the sect master of the Elis sect, Feng Hua, spoke. Our Elis sect is your enemy. Today's matter was ordered by Saint Envoy Beimang, and we had no choice. This time, we'll consider it over. We'll give you sufficient compensation. Young man, you must know when to advance and when to retreat. You've taken advantage of today's matter. It's time to retreat. A saint from the Three Immoral Island, who was the new island master of the Three Immoral Island, slowly spoke. Otherwise, you won't have a good ending today. If we tell the Beimang Academy about today's matter, you won't have an easy time. Are you trying to threaten me? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered, and his face was calm. No one knew what he was thinking as he slowly spoke. It's not a threat. I'm just telling you that young man must know when to advance and retreat. The island master of the Three Immoral Islands slowly spoke, as if he was confident in his victory. Today's 4 chapters, there will be more. Let me save the draft first. Chapter 393. The other 3 sects of Wusheng Nation, together with Wusheng Academy, represented the strongest power in Wusheng Nation. If Chu Fengmian were to become their enemy today, It would mean that Chu Fengmian was going against the entire Wusheng nation. The island master of Three Immoral Island is right. Chu Fengmian, let's both take a step back today. We will apologize to you and let this matter pass. However, you must release the Saint Envoy. You can't afford to offend Beimang Academy. Feng Hua, the sect master of Ila's sect, agreed. Otherwise, our three sects will support Wusheng Academy to deal with you. That's right. The sect master of Candle Flame sect stood out and snorted. The three of them looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. They were waiting for Chu Fengmian to take a step back. Now, they stood firmly on the young man's side. After all, Beimang Academy was a colossus that dominated the northern region. Chu Fengmian was just a loner. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't go against Beimang Academy. There was no need to hesitate. The three of them stood firmly on Beimang Academy's side and kicked Wusheng Academy out as compensation for Chu Fengmian. They were confident that Chu Fengmian would agree to this condition. After all, Chu Fengmian might be able to deal with Wusheng Academy alone. However, if the three sects were to join in, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be able to contend against them alone. The three of them were colluding to force Chu Fengmian to take a step back and swallow his anger. Unfortunately, the three of them didn't know Chu Fengmian's character. If it were any other martial artist, they would have definitely taken a step back. However, the person today was Chu Fengmian. In Chu Fengmian's heart, there was no such thing as taking a step back. Moreover, anyone who dared to go against him must die. It was the same for the three sections. You three trash, who gave you the guts to threaten me? Chu Fengmian raised his eyebrows and shouted angrily. Also, do you think I'm afraid of you three sects? The three major sects also have a part to play in today's matter. Since you dare to stand on the same side today, then very well, there is no need for your three major sects to exist. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. The people from the three great sects had always targeted him. Back when Chu Fengmian had caused a ruckus at the Crown Prince's wedding, the three great sects had simply sat on the mountain and watched the tigers fight. Last time, Chu Fengmian didn't have time to deal with them, but this time was different. Today, he was going to get rid of the three great sections. In the future, there would only be one cold snow pavilion in the victorious martial nation. There would no longer be any four great sections. People from the three great sects still dared to threaten Chu Fengmian? Anyone who dared to threaten Chu Fengmian must die. What? Arrogant. How dare you? The expressions of the three men all changed. Then, they shouted angrily. Chu Fengmian, who do you think you are? Do you really think you're invincible and can contend against our three great sects? Let's see what you can do by yourself. The three of them were the sect masters of their respective sections. They had always been the ones to berate others. When had they ever been the ones to be berated? Their faces were flushed red, and they were all furious. Spiritual energy suddenly erupted from their bodies. Feng Hua, the sect master of the Ila's sect, shouted loudly. Just you wait. Wait for the endless revenge of our three great sects. You and the cold snow pavilion will be destroyed. Hearing Feng Hua's words, Chu Fengmian revealed a disdainful smile. Do you think you can still leave here alive today? How dare you? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the sect master of the Candle Flame sect shouted angrily. If you dare to kill me, you'll have to wait for the endless revenge of our Candle Flame sect. The old ancestor of our Candle Flame sect will definitely not let you off. Before the chief of the Candle Flame sect could finish his sentence, an incomparably huge war dragon claw had already descended from the sky and smashed towards his body. His body was directly shattered, turning into a cluster of blood mist. Don't dare? So what if the peak saints of the three great sects are here? Today, whoever comes will die. No one can save you. Chu Fengmian sneered. With a grab of his hand, the saint blood essence of the Candle Flame sect master was collected by him. Let's go! Seeing that the sect master of the Candle Flame sect was killed by Chu Fengmian in one move, the island master of the Three Immoral Island and Feng Hua looked at each other. Spiritual energy erupted from their bodies as they tried to escape. Chu Fengmian's current strength was far beyond theirs. Now, only the peak saints of their sects could contend with Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, a huge bronze door appeared in front of the island master of the Three Immortal Island and sucked the two of them into it. They were about to disappear in the air. The door of immortal mystery? Looks like I didn't completely destroy this spiritual weapon last time. You guys actually repair it? Chu Fengmian looked at the door of immortal mystery and sneered. Last time, Fang Dao had used the door of immortal mystery to launch a sneak attack, but it was smashed by the richly lush monument. Unexpectedly, the Three Immortal Island had repaired it. Once again, they summoned the door of immortal mystery to escape from Chu Fengmian. Even a peak saint wouldn't be able to escape from Chu Fengmian's grasp. How could a mere door of immortal mystery be possible? Come here. Chu Fengmian grabbed with his hand and reached into the depths of the void. Looking at the door of immortal mystery, he snorted coldly and reached out with his hand. The door of immortal mystery was immediately pulled back from the depths of the void by Chu Fengmian and held in his hand. Break! Chu Fengmian exerted force with his palm, and the door of immortal mystery in his hand was instantly crushed. It was crushed into powder, and could no longer be restored. At the same time, the island master of the Three Immortal Island and Fenghua also escaped from the door of immortal mystery. The aftermath of the door of immortal mystery shook them until they vomited blood. When did this person's strength become so terrifying? The island master of the Three Immortal Island watched Chu Fengmian crush the door of immortal mystery with his bare hands. The door of immortal mystery was an Earth-grade spirit artifact, the array artifact of the Three Immortal Island. The last time Chu Fengmian broke it, it could be said that it was destroyed by the richly lush monument. After all, the richly lush monument was a heaven-grade spirit artifact. It was pardonable that it could destroy the door of immortal mystery. But this time, Chu Fengmian crushed the door of immortal mystery with his bare hands. The Earth-grade spirit artifact was actually so fragile in Chu Fengmian's hands. His strength was even more terrifying than the peak saints of the Three Immortal Island. So strong. Has the young master's strength already reached this level? He's almost as strong as our former master. In the freezing snow pavilion, the primordial dragon turtle was shocked to see Chu Fengmian make a move. First update of the day. Thank you so much for your generous tips. Chapter 394. When young master left a month ago, he had just stepped into the wind-controlling realm and could at most contend with a saint at the third level of the divine power realm. But now, the sect masters of the three major sects are like ants in front of young master. The ancient dragon turtle looked at Chu Fengmian with shock in his eyes. He was clear about Chu Fengmian's aptitude. It was definitely much higher than any genius he had ever seen. But now, in just a month, Chu Fengmian's strength had grown to such a level. How could he not be shocked? The current Chu Fengmian was probably invincible under the life and death realm. In Wuxin country, no one could stop Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and struck out a palm, pressing down on the island master of Three Immortal Island. You can't kill me. Our Three Immortal Island has 3 pinnacle saints and 3 immortal old ancestors. Come and save me. The island master of Three Immortal Island shouted and threw out a spiritual talisman to summon the pinnacle saints of Three Immortal Island. Seeing the talisman fly out, Chu Fengmian stood still without any intention to stop it. Whoever came today would die. Since the pinnacle saints of Three Immortal Island had come, Chu Fengmian would have to trouble them one by one. Today, no one can save you. Pinnacle saints? Even pinnacle saints will die. With a thought, Chu Fengmian pressed down with his palm. The island master of Three Immortal Island didn't even have time to resist before he was killed by Chu Fengmian. The island master of Three Immortal Island didn't even have the qualifications to submit to Chu Fengmian and was killed on the spot. Seeing the island master of Three Immortal Island die in Chu Fengmian's hands, Feng Wufeng's face paled. Feng Hua, the sect leader of the Elis sect, was extremely pale. His eyes were filled with determination as he roared loudly. Chu Fengmian, even if I die today, I'll drag you down with me. There was no point in escaping. Feng Wufeng roared crazily and the spiritual energy in his body began to become chaotic. Self-detonation. Feng Wufeng knew that he couldn't escape today, so he chose to self-detonate. He wanted to fight to the death with Chu Fengmian. Wind Fiend Disintegration Technique. An endless gale surrounded Fenghua, making it impossible for anyone to get close to him. This was the Aeolus sect's unique disintegration technique, which was much more powerful than the self-destruction of an ordinary saint. If I'm going to die today, I'll die with you. Fenghua swept up countless gusts of wind and suddenly rushed toward Chu Fengmian. He wanted to self-detonate to kill Chu Fengmian. Be careful. Han Yueli, who was recuperating in the cold snow pavilion, couldn't help but exclaim when he saw this scene. The self-destruction of a saint was extremely terrifying. Even a pinnacle saint could be severely injured or even killed by the explosion. Creation. With a thought, Chu Fengmian activated the power of creation within his body. Chu Fengmian suddenly took a step forward and directly arrived in front of Fenghua. This was simply an extremely crazy act. How dare he approach Fenghua at this time? Chu Fengmian's palm suddenly slapped toward Fenghua's chest. Destroy. Seeing Chu Fengmian approaching, Fenghua's face revealed a hint of madness. All of a sudden, all of the essence blood in his body was ignited. In an instant, all of it erupted. The boundless spiritual energy turned into a huge explosion that swept out in all directions. Suppress. In the face of the endless explosion, Chu Fengmian waved his hand and only uttered one word. Suddenly, the power of creation appeared in Chu Fengmian's palm. He pressed down with his hand, as if the entire sky was being suppressed. This huge explosion was actually suppressed by Chu Fengmian's hand and couldn't spread out at all. Then, with a thought from Chu Fengmian, the endless explosion of spiritual power directly disappeared in Chu Fengmian's palm. The power of Fenghua's self-destruction couldn't hurt Chu Fengmian. Instead, it was suppressed by Chu Fengmian with a wave of his hand. Even the slightest explosion couldn't spread out. Fenghua was completely played in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand and had no power to resist. Fenghua's body was destroyed, but he still had his last breath. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was unharmed, his eyes were almost crazy. This was his last desperate counterattack. He didn't want to escape, but only wanted to fight to the death with Chu Fengmian. However, it was meaningless. His life and death struggle was like a joke in front of Chu Fengmian. Die! Chu Fengmian sighed softly. With a thought, the battle dragon claw fell from the sky and completely destroyed Fenghua. Who is this junior? Stop! Damn it! Feng Rui has fallen. Who dares to kill the island master of the Three Immortal Island? This old man is going to tear him into pieces. Three figures came from afar and happened to see the scene of Chu Fengmian killing Fenghua. Each of them looked at Chu Fengmian. These three people are the three old antiques of the Three Immortal Island. They are called the Three Immortals. The Three Immortal Island was founded by the three of them. They are not easy to deal with. Han Yueli's injuries had almost recovered. She came to Chu Fengmian's side and looked at the three figures as she said to Chu Fengmian. Han Yueli's realm had reached the 7th level of the Divine Power realm. She had the profound cold body, one of the innate divine bodies. After stepping into the Divine Power realm, the power of the profound cold body had completely erupted. Moreover, she had become the pavilion master of the cold snow pavilion. With countless resources, her realm suddenly soared. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to resist the siege of countless experts for so long. It doesn't matter. They are just three old guys from the Three Immortal Island. If these three old turtles were hiding in a corner, it would be difficult to find them. But since they have come out, today is the day they die. Chu Fengmian said calmly. After all, the three immortals were three peak saints. If they insisted on hiding, Chu Fengmian might not be able to find them. After all, Chu Fengmian wasn't invincible. Unless he stepped into the life and death realm, he could easily find and kill the peak saints. But since they had come out, they wouldn't be able to leave today. The three old guys must have participated in the siege of the Three Immortal Island. Now, the three major sects were Chu Fengmian's enemies. Chu Fengmian would kill the three old guys sooner or later. What? The three peak saints, the three immortals of the three immortal island, flushed when they heard Chu Fengmian's words. They never thought that Chu Fengmian would face them without fear. Instead, he didn't put them in his eyes at all. Chapter 395. The three of them were known as the three immortals. In Wuxin country, they were like immortals. They were lofty ancestors and giants. Now, Chu Fengmian's words were simply a naked humiliation in their ears. One of the white-haired elders, Feng Xingzi, looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent and yelled angrily. Chu Fengmian, what are you doing? Do you want to become an enemy of the three immortal island? Today, you killed the master of our three immortal island. Today, you must give us an explanation. Feng Xingzi stepped forward, glanced at Chu Fengmian, and then at the cold snow pavilion below, and snorted coldly. If you don't give us an explanation for today's matter and provoke the three immortal island for no reason, you and the cold snow pavilion will be destroyed today. Feng Xingzi spoke with endless superiority and looked at Chu Fengmian as if he could kill him in any way. After all, they were all peak saints, and they had heard of Chu Fengmian's strength. However, they didn't take it seriously at all. So what if he could defeat an ordinary saint? There was a huge gap between an ordinary saint and a saint at the pinnacle. Today, in his opinion, Chu Fengmian was an ant that he could crush at any time. However, Chu Fengmian's confidence seemed to make him feel that something was wrong. But soon, Feng Xingzi sneered. So what if he was confident? He didn't believe that a junior in the wind-controlling realm could compete with a peak saint. Give us an explanation. Today, your island master besieged the cold snow pavilion. Don't tell me it has nothing to do with you. He deserved to be killed. Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Xingzi and said loudly, ignoring the threat in his words. He dared to besiege the cold snow pavilion today. Don't tell me it has nothing to do with you three old men. Chu Fengmian glanced at Feng Xingzi and sneered. Chu Fengmian didn't care about a peak saint at all. More than one or two peak saints had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Feng Xingzi didn't make much of a difference. Threatening Chu Fengmian? Feng Xingzi didn't have the right to do so. We did know that you besieged the cold snow pavilion, but that was the North Sea Academy's order. Do you dare to disobey the North Sea Academy's order? Feng Xingzi sneered and directly tossed this matter to the Northern Mang Academy's side. However, you dared to kill the island master of the three immortal island, which is a provocation of the three immortal island. Today, you must apologize to three immortal island. Feng Xingzi pointed a finger at the pavilion. Your cold snow pavilion must hand over 500 disciples to the three immortal island as slaves. At the same time, hand over all of the good fortune you've acquired, as well as the rich lush steel. This matter can be considered as written off. Feng Li was an Feng immortal. Feng Li was an An sect. Even with her indifferent character, she was now completely enraged. Asking the Han Snow Pavilion to hand over 500 disciples as maids was an insult to the Han Snow Pavilion. Moreover, he wanted Chu Fengmian to hand over his fortuitous encounters and richly lush monument. I almost forgot. And you, Hanyu Li. You must cripple your own cultivation and exchange your life for the pavilion. Feng Xingzi looked at Hanyu Li with greedy eyes. I heard you have the mystic frost body. Innate physique. If we can obtain your Xiantian power, we will be able to cross the life and death calamity and enter the life and death realm. We will exchange your life for the cold snow pavilion. Feng Xingzi looked at Chu Fengmian and said calmly. Chu Fengmian, make your choice. Do you want to obediently hand them over, or do you want us to kill you and destroy the pavilion? Then, everyone will become the slaves of the three immortal island. I choose the third option. Chu Fengmian looked at Feng Xingzi with intense killing intent. The stronger the killing intent in his heart, the calmer his expression was. Those who knew Chu Fengmian could come over. Chu Fengmian was furious. Chu Fengmian didn't make a move at first because he wanted to give Feng Xingzi a chance. But now that Feng Shenzi was courting death, Chu Fengmian wouldn't let him go. Feng Shenzi snorted. The third option? Kid, you only have two choices. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with killing intent. That is, everyone from the Three Immoral Island will die. Pay for the grudge of besieging the pavilion today. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Master Feng Shenzi snorted in disdain. He strode forward and suddenly attacked. You want to kill us? Chu Fengmian, it seems like you've lost your mind. For a moment, a gale surrounded him. Layers of gale condensed in his palm as he blasted a palm strike at Chu Fengmian. This palm was the real killing move. At the same time, a darkness appeared above Feng Shenzi's head. This darkness covered the sky and covered the sun. It was as if it had covered the horizon. Chu Fengmian, you didn't expect that the Three Immoral Island has a secret technique that can deceive the will of heaven. Do you think I can't do it? Feng Shenzi let out a hearty laugh. His spiritual energy exploded, and he didn't bother to hide his strength. It turned into a huge wind blade and slashed toward Chu Fengmian. There's such a secret technique? Han Yueli couldn't help but frown. Feng Shenzi was a pinnacle saint and shouldn't be able to use his full strength. After all, once he used his full strength, it would lead to a life-and-death calamity. But now, the secret technique that could deceive the will of heaven allowed him to use his full strength without attracting a life-and-death calamity. A pinnacle saint who used his full strength was completely different from those who were afraid of a life-and-death calamity. With Han Yueli's strength, if Feng Shenzi was afraid of a life-and-death calamity, she still had the ability to fight with him. But now, Feng Shenzi's strength had far surpassed her. His every move was aimed at Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli. He wanted to defeat both of them at the same time. This secret technique is not bad, but it's a pity that your struggle is meaningless. Seeing Feng Shenzi's full strength, Chu Fengmian's expression was as calm as ever. To him, it didn't matter whether Feng Shenzi was afraid of a life-and-death calamity, because he was just an ant in Chu Fengmian's hands. Feng Shenzi, your strength is not bad, but it's a pity that you'll fall today. Chu Fengmian snorted and blasted out a palm. It turned into a ball of battle dragon power and blasted out like a roaring battle dragon. With a single move, the wind slash that filled the sky was completely destroyed in an instant. What? This kid can contend with Feng Shenzi? Chapter 396. Wu Duzi, the other immortal of the Three Immortals Island, was shocked to see Chu Fengmian neutralize the wind slash with a single move. Feng Shenzi didn't hold back in his attack. A true peak saint could easily kill an ordinary saint if he went all out. Moreover, Chu Fengmian hadn't even stepped into the divine force realm. He wasn't even a saint yet. But now, Chu Fengmian neutralized Feng Shenzi's attack. Even if it wasn't Feng Shenzi's killing move, it still shocked him. Amazing. If we don't kill him today, he'll become a big threat in the future. The other Yi Jianzi slowly spoke as killing intent surged from between his brows. It might be impossible for an ordinary person to contend against an ordinary saint at the Imperial Wind Realm, but with their status, they naturally knew about it. For example, in Beimang Academy, some of the true geniuses were indeed able to contend against a saint at the Imperial Wind Realm. But they could only contend against an ordinary saint. Only the true super geniuses of Beimang Academy could contend against a peak saint. How could they believe that Chu Fengmian's aptitude wasn't inferior to the super geniuses of Beimang Academy? If they allowed Chu Fengmian to grow, his future would be limitless. Now that they had become enemies with Chu Fengmian, they had to completely eliminate him. Wu Duzi and Yi Jianzi glanced at each other. They could tell from each other's eyes that they were waiting for an opportunity. Chu Fengmian, your strength is indeed not bad. Feng Shenzi looked at Chu Fengmian with flickering eyes. No one was more surprised than him that his attack was neutralized. However, although Feng Shenzi's attack was a killing move, it wasn't his full strength. Peak saints naturally didn't lack trump cards. But do you think you can contend against a peak saint like this? You're too arrogant. Wind demon, come out. Feng Shenzi roared furiously. It was as if an extremely powerful force had been awakened within his body. Ling Feng's body was now covered in scales. Wind demon. Feng Xingzi was actually a demonic cultivator. He turned into a wind demon with scales all over his body. He didn't look like a saint, but more like a demon. This is the power of wind demon. Let's see how you can resist it. After transforming into the wind demon, Feng Xingzi's strength was several times stronger than before. With a single move, he turned into countless hurricanes. These hurricanes were filled with demonic nature. Every hurricane seemed to have turned into a small wind demon as they charged toward Chu Fengmian. I was wondering who you were just trash from 99 demons? Chu Fengmian harumphed coldly. These 3 immortals were actually 3 devils. The 9-demon city was really powerful. Even in a remote place like Wuxing country, there were people from the 9-demon city. Oh? You know who we are? Feng Xingzi's words heard. Laughed Feng Xingzi's out. It seems like you know quite a lot. Since that's the case, then you can become our nourishment. Feng Xingzi, will Fengzi Devan. Your Fen Finesse's blood Fengzi. Feng Xingzi laughed sinisterly. His previous demeanor was nowhere to be seen. He looked like a man-eating demon. Although 9-demon city was one of the 7 great sects, many of its disciples were demons. Feng Xingzi should be one of them. He came to Wuxing country to proclaim himself as the overlord. Not only you, but Hanueli and countless disciples of Cold Snow Pavilion will become our food. Once we kill you, we'll enter life and death realm. At that time, we'll kill all the experts in Wuxing country. You'll become our food. Feng Xingzi laughed sinisterly. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he charged at Chu Fengmian. Endless madness turned into 2 huge claws, clawing at Chu Fengmian. The moment Feng Xingzi attacked, Wu Duzi and Yi Jianzi, who had been waiting for an opportunity, attacked at the same time. A witchcraft and a sword shot at Chu Fengmian at the same time. The 2 had been waiting for a long time. They wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian. Profound cold 1,000 miles. With a shout, Hanueli, who was beside Chu Fengmian, suddenly attacked. She slashed out with her spiritual sword, which turned into layers of ice to block the sneak attack of Wu Duzi and Yi Jianzi. So what if you have the profound cold body? A little guy at the 7th level of divine power realm dares to attack us? Break for me. Yi Jianzi looked at Hanueli's attack and coldly snorted. His sword slashed at Hanueli. Immediately, the layers of ice shattered. The strength of a peak saint was far beyond Hanueli's. At the same time, Wu Duzi's witchcraft arrived in front of Chu Fengmian. This witchcraft contained countless strange and mysterious power, which forced Chu Fengmian to the extreme. Kid, die! Feng Xingzi laughed sinisterly. His face was incomparably complacent. The 3 of them attacked together to kill Chu Fengmian. After killing Chu Fengmian and devouring his flesh and blood, their strength would improve further. It would only be a matter of time before they passed the life and death tribulation. Wu Duzi and Yi Jianzi did not attack at the beginning because they wanted to numb Chu Fengmian. Now that they suddenly attacked, the power of their sneak attack was more threatening than the 3 of them attacking together. Oh no! The old guys from the 3 Immortal Island actually attacked together without caring about their status. They even launched a sneak attack. Countless disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion below could not help but be shocked. They were extremely anxious. Even a pinnacle saint would be killed by such an attack. However, in the next moment, the whole situation changed dramatically. It was as if the power that Chu Fengmian had suppressed for a long time had completely erupted. A huge war dragon claw suddenly fell from the sky. The 1,296 drops of primordial war dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body condensed and turned into a war dragon claw. This war dragon claw even contained a bit of creation power. It was simply Chu Fengmian's strongest move. The bloodline of the primordial battle dragon had fused with the power of creation, turning into an even more powerful battle dragon claw. Every scale on the battle dragon claw contained strange patterns. The world shook because of the claw. The change happened in an instant. The war dragon claw fell with a loud rumble. Feng Xingzi, Wu Duzi, and Yi Jianzi were all sent flying. Countless cracks appeared on their bodies. A moment ago, Chu Fengmian was in a situation where he would definitely die. However, in the blink of an eye, Feng Xingzi, Wu Duzi, and Yi Jianzi were sent flying. Today's fourth update. There will be more on Friday. Chapter 397. What kind of terrifying power is this? True dragon? Ancestral dragon? It's even more terrifying than this. What the hell is this? Damn it. How did we provoke such an opponent? Feng Xingzi, Wu Duzi, and Yi Jianzi were sent flying by the palm strike. Their bodies shattered bit by bit, and each of them had different expressions on their faces. Even Yi Jianzi had a look of regret on his face. Even with the three of them working together, they were still not Chu Fengmian's opponent. Chu Fengmian's strength was much stronger than theirs. How could we lose to him? The three of us can even contend against a life and death realm expert. How could we not be his opponent? Feng Xingzi's voice was trembling. He was extremely shocked. They had heard of Chu Fengmian's various miraculous abilities, but they never imagined that a wind-controlling realm martial artist could contend against three peak saints. It wasn't even a contest. It was a crushing defeat. Chu Fengmian was just accumulating his strength. With a single move, he had thoroughly defeated the three of them. Feng Xingzi. Yi Jianzi. Don't regret it. This kid's strength is indeed tyrannical, but it also means that he has countless fortuitous encounters. Wu Duzi said with a malevolent expression. Let's attack together and kill him. Once we get his flesh, our future achievements will be limitless. Wu Duzi said viciously. They were clear about Chu Fengmian's character. He would seek revenge for the slightest mistake. Since they had besieged Chu Fengmian today, there was no possibility of reconciliation. It would be better to risk their lives and kill Chu Fengmian. For them, this was a supreme opportunity. As long as they could devour Chu Fengmian's flesh, their future achievements would be limitless. As his voice rang out, Wu Duzi let out a furious roar. Astonishing spiritual energy erupted from his body. Wu Duzi directly turned into a witch demon and charged at Chu Fengmian. All right. Feng Xingzi and Yi Jianzi echoed at the same time. Their strength erupted, and they turned into a wind demon and a sword demon. The three demons struck out at the same time. Their demonic auras were terrifying. The entire sky was filled with boundless demonic aura, causing the entire sky to look like a demonic realm. Demonic chi overflowed into the sky. It was like a scene of purgatory. Ultimate Sky Fiend. As the three of them joined forces, an incomparably huge devil appeared amidst the demonic aura that filled the sky. He threw out a punch, which swept up the endless demonic chi and punched toward Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's face was calm. Facing the demonic chi that filled the sky, there was no change in his expression. He took a step forward, and the scarlet flame sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He pointed the tip of his sword and slashed out. You want to fight against the power of this heavenly demon? When Feng Xingzi, Wu Duzi, and Yi Jianzi saw this, they couldn't help but sneer. This was truly arrogant. Their heavenly demon power was close to the level of life and death realm. The combined power of three peak saints was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! A sword and a fist suddenly met in midair. Boundless demonic aura suddenly spread to Chu Fengmian's body, encircling him and eroding his body. Brat, you're too arrogant. He dared to resist the power of the heavenly demon. You're courting death. Feng Xingzi sneered when he saw this. With such demonic chi, Chu Fengmian would undoubtedly be severely injured even if he didn't die. However, in the next moment, the endless demonic chi around Chu Fengmian dispersed, and Chu Fengmian walked out from it. He was unharmed. How is this possible? Feng Xingzi looked at Chu Fengmian, his eyes almost popping out. The endless demonic chi swept out, and even a peak saint would die or be severely injured. However, Chu Fengmian walked out unscathed. Their full strength and the joint attack of 3 peak saints couldn't do anything to Chu Fengmian. They couldn't even hurt Chu Fengmian at all. The 3 of them were invincible figures in victorious Wushuang country. They were the true overlords of a region, but even when they joined forces, they couldn't hurt Chu Fengmian at all. This scene was simply shocking to the extreme. Young Master's strength is much stronger than before. Moreover, the spiritual power in his body is even purer and stronger than the power of the primordial battle dragon. The primordial dragon turtle looked at Chu Fengmian from below, his eyes filled with shock. The primordial dragon turtle knew that Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of the primordial battle dragon, and his strength must be incomparably strong. However, just now, the power that burst out from Chu Fengmian's body was much stronger than the power of the primordial battle dragon. Now, Chu Fengmian had more fortuitous encounters in the Qin Empire country. You 3 little bastards, do you really think that a third-rate demonic skill can hurt me? Chu Fengmian looked at the 3 of them and sneered. He moved, and with one step, he suddenly held the scarlet flame sword in his hand and slashed at the 3 of them. Hiss! As the sword slashed out, it instantly turned into thousands of sword chi. 1,000 sword strikes. The moment Chu Fengmian's sword edge struck out, the sky was filled with endless sword chi. Streaks of sword chi instantly shattered the heavenly demon that the 3 of them had conjured together. At the same time, the sword chi also slashed at Fengshengzi, Wu Duzi, and Yi Jianzi. I am the sword demon. I don't believe that your swordsmanship is comparable to mine. Yi Jianzi snorted, and his body turned into a longsword. The longsword contained an endless amount of blood chi, and no one knew how many people it had killed in the past. The sword essence burst out violently. It turned into endless sword chi and slashed at Chu Fengmian. You puny sword demon, how dare you compare yourself with me? Seeing Yi Jianzi turn into the sword demon, Chu Fengmian sneered, and his eyes were full of disdain. He was once the #1 sword Dao expert. Not to mention a puny sword demon, even the ancestor of the sword demon would not dare to compete with Chu Fengmian in sword Dao. He was simply courting death. Infinite primordial chaos. 3-foot blade. The sword in Chu Fengmian's hand moved, and he slowly slashed out. Hiss! A ray of sword chi streaked across the sky. All of a sudden, the countless sword auras in the area were all shattered. The long sword that Yi Jianzi had transformed into was directly severed at the waist. One slash, just one slash. Yi Jianzi, who had used all his strength, was killed by one slash. Sweeping 8 desolation. With one slash, the wind swept away the clouds, and everything that was Yi Jianzi was destroyed. A peak saint like him had fallen. Today's update: I came back late at night. Chapter 398. Impossible. This is impossible. When Fengshengzi and Wu Duzi saw that Yi Jianzi had been killed in a single strike, their eyes were filled with shock. They were clear about Yi Jianzi's strength. Even life and death experts wouldn't dare to say that they could kill him in a single strike. The 3 of them were on par with each other. Now that Yi Jianzi was dead, they became nervous. Chu Fengmian, we've offended you this time. It's our fault. We'll leave now. Fengshengzi's eyes flickered as he suddenly spoke to Chu Fengmian. The moment he spoke, he turned his head and exchanged a glance with Wu Duzi. Unexpectedly, he was planning to leave. Yi Jianzi had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. With just the 2 of them, they weren't Chu Fengmian's opponent. You want to leave? Chu Fengmian sneered and suddenly slashed out with his sword. Sword chi filled the sky and immediately sealed off all the space in the surroundings. Chu Fengmian, what's the meaning of this? Could it be that you really want to fight to the death today? Wu Duzi looked at Chu Fengmian and coldly said. We're in the wrong this time, but don't be unforgiving. Since you know that we're from 9 Demon City, you should know the price of offending us. Wu Duzi sneered. Yi Jianzi's death is our apology. Don't be unforgiving. Young people should know when to advance and retreat. After Wu Duzi finished speaking, he glanced at Feng Xingzi and said in a low voice. Let's go. Unforgiving? Threatening? Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a cold smile. The sword qi that filled the sky became even more powerful, directly locking the two of them in. You two are nothing but trash from Nine Demon City. You want to use Nine Demon City to threaten this Chu? Moreover, I'm not afraid of Nine Demon City. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted. If I didn't have the strength today, I'm afraid that you two wouldn't have let me go. Now, you want to leave unscathed? Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi saw that the situation wasn't good and wanted to leave. How could there be such a good thing in the world? The moment the three of them arrived, they immediately offered such excessive conditions in an attempt to intimidate Chu Fengmian. Now that their strength was insufficient, how could they possibly escape unscathed? Chu Fengmian sneered. If you don't give me an explanation, don't even think about leaving today. Give me an explanation? Chu Fengmian, what kind of explanation do you want? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Feng Xingzi snorted coldly. The meaning behind those words was that Chu Fengmian had taken the initiative to concede. The Nine Demon City was one of the 7 great sects of the 9 regions, and its status was even higher than the North Sea Academy. The two of them didn't believe that Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid of the prestige of the Nine Demon City. It's simple. Since you've offended me, I'll hang your heads in front of the cold snow pavilion to remind people of the price they have to pay for offending me. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his mouth. Although his words were calm, the tone of his voice was resolute and decisive. This sentence did not conceal the killing intent within. What? Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi, who had a complacent look on their faces, suddenly changed their expressions after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. Their hearts beat wildly. Borrow their skulls? Not to mention saints, even life and death realm experts would die if they lost their heads. The meaning behind his words was simply that he was going to kill the two of them. Wu Duzi looked at Chu Fengmian and furiously shouted. Chu Fengmian, don't go too far. Too far? The ones who went too far today are you two. You besieged the cold snow pavilion and wanted to kill me. Now, you want to leave unscathed? What qualifications do you have? A trace of killing intent flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He strode forward and directly rushed towards the two of them. If the two of you don't agree today, then I'll personally take your heads. Chu Fengmian's figure moved. His speed was astonishingly fast. Almost in an instant, Chu Fengmian arrived in front of Wu Duzi and slashed his sword at Wu Duzi. This sword was astonishingly fast. The moment Wu Duzi reacted, it was already in front of him. Attack! Fight with him! Today, we'll fight to the death with him! Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi furiously shouted at the same time. They could already see that Chu Fengmian would definitely not let the two of them go today. Now, they could only fight with all their might. The two of them simultaneously struck their own chests with their palms and spat out a large amount of essence blood. The essence blood began to burn crazily, making a final struggle. Chu Fengmian, we'll perish together with you. Wu! Du! Feng! Today, we'll burn our essence blood to completely kill you. Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi shouted at the same time. 2 waves of spiritual energy erupted at the same time, sweeping everything like a huge wave and bombarding Chu Fengmian. The two of them no longer had the slightest intention of escaping. At this critical moment of life and death, the two of them erupted with their most powerful strength, breaking through their own limits. The limit of a human was madness. Not to mention that the two of them were originally devils. Each of them went crazy, erupting all their potential and squeezing it out. The billowing spiritual energy turned into a huge wave, pressing down on Chu Fengmian. The huge wave was the condensation of all the trump cards in their lives. They put all their strength into the huge wave. They put all their hope in the huge wave, turning it into their strongest attack to completely kill Chu Fengmian. The 2 peak saints put their lives on the line, and the power was extremely terrifying. The surrounding space was about to be torn apart by the huge wave. At the same time, the moment the huge wave was released, a supreme spiritual energy suddenly broke through the air. A sudden change occurred. All of a sudden, a golden figure broke through the space and appeared in the sky. The golden figure was extremely majestic, and his strength was even stronger than Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi. The golden figure appeared, broke through the void, and threw a punch at Chu Fengmian. The punch seemed to have been condensed for a long time, and it contained the golden figure's full strength. It suddenly appeared to help Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi kill Chu Fengmian. Invincible Divine Fist. The golden figure's temperament was definitely that of an extremely arrogant person. He was extremely domineering and looked down on everyone. The moment he attacked, it was the true Tao of a tyrant, the Tao of invincibility. Xiao Wudi, you're finally out. The sudden appearance of the golden figure did not surprise Chu Fengmian in the slightest, as if he had predicted all of this. Thank you for your reward. Thank you for that woman. Thank you. Playboy? Destined to die alone. Second update for today. Chapter 399. Xiao Wudi, you finally appeared. Chu Fengmian's words directly revealed the identity of the golden figure. This golden figure was none other than the #1 expert of Qin Empire, Xiao Wudi. When Chu Fengmian was fighting with Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi, he had already sensed that there were other people hiding in the surroundings. Xiao Wudi's invincible Tao allowed Chu Fengmian to see through his identity in an instant. Xiao Wudi had always been in Jiuxi Empire, fighting for treasures and preparing to break through to life and death realm. However, it wasn't as if he didn't know what was happening in Qin Empire. This time, he secretly came to Wuxin country to look for an opportunity to sneak attack Chu Fengmian. Now that Chu Fengmian was fighting with Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi, he suddenly appeared and joined forces with Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi to kill Chu Fengmian. Who is this person? Xiao Wudi's sudden appearance puzzled Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi. However, when they saw Xiao Wudi attacking Chu Fengmian, Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi revealed smiles on their faces. Now, no matter who came, as long as they were Chu Fengmian's enemy, they were their friends. This person's strength is so strong, much stronger than us. I'm afraid he's a half-step life and death realm expert, someone who can cross the life and death tribulation at any time. Let's join forces with him and kill this kid first. Wu Duzi's eyes turned as he shouted loudly. Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi released all of their spiritual energy and condensed it into a huge wave. A huge wave and an invincible divine fist. These two extremely terrifying spiritual energies attacked Chu Fengmian at the same time. Kid, let's see how you resist this time. You have too many fortuitous encounters. Today, I'll kill you. With your fortuitous encounters, not to mention a small Qin empire, I'll conquer countless countries. I'll become a great emperor. Xiao Wudi coldly snorted. The invincible Tao strengthened his body and condensed on his fist wind. An invincible divine fist bombarded Chu Fengmian. So what if you know? Let's see how you're going to break out of this deadly situation. Xiao Wudi's strength was even stronger than the Qin emperor. He was already infinitely close to the life and death realm. As long as he was willing, he could pass through the life and death tribulation in an instant. With such an expert in Feng Xingzi and Wu Duzi, these two pinnacle saints. The three of them attacked Chu Fengmian at the same time. No saint could possibly survive. It was an absolute death trap. Xiao Wudi had waited for a long time just to let Chu Fengmian fall into this hopeless situation. He wanted to kill Chu Fengmian with a fatal blow. Xiao Wudi was a character whose name shook the entire Qin Empire. He claimed to be invincible. Now that such a character was plotting to ambush Chu Fengmian, he was definitely extremely dangerous. This massive wave was constantly suppressing Chu Fengmian's body. At the same time, the invincible divine fist was already hurtling towards Chu Fengmian. Xiao Wudi, do you think I'm not on guard against you? Your schemes will not be able to hide from me. Chu Fengmian sneered. He had been waiting for Xiao Wudi to make a move for a long time. Xiao Wudi's strength was enough to contend with Chu Fengmian. If he wanted to escape, Chu Fengmian could not do anything to him. Therefore, Chu Fengmian used this trick to lure the snake out of its hole. He was waiting for Zhao Wudi to make a move. Now that Zhao Wudi had appeared, there was no possibility for him to escape. Chu Fengmian would not give him another chance to escape. Sword. Lord. Heaven. Earth. Sword intent burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. This sword intent seemed to connect with the heaven and earth. In an instant, the whole surroundings turned into a world of swords. Streams of spiritual power condensed into spiritual swords. There were more than 100 million of these spiritual swords. These spiritual swords sealed the surrounding area, turning it into a cage. At the same time, countless spiritual swords slashed toward Zhao Wudi, Fengxingzi, and Wu Duzi. Each of these spiritual swords contained the power of the war dragon and a trace of the power of creation. These two extremely powerful forces were merged into one by Chu Fengmian. The power of each spiritual sword was more powerful than many pinnacle saints' desperate attacks. Moreover, there were more than 100 million spiritual swords. This number was almost endless. This was simply a huge trap that wanted to catch the three of them in one fell swoop. Domain? No, this is sword intent. Sword intent can affect the heaven and earth? How terrifying must one's understanding of sword principle be to achieve this? Zhao Wudi looked at the changes around him and his face became extremely ugly. He originally thought that his mantis stalking the cicada would launch a sneak attack to kill Chu Fengmian. However, he did not expect that all of this was within Chu Fengmian's calculations. Chu Fengmian had secretly condensed this sword formation long ago, waiting for Zhao Wudi to appear so that he could catch them in one fell swoop. We've been tricked. Let's attack together and break this sword formation. Let's run away first and find a chance to kill this kid. Zhao Wudi shouted at Fengxingzi and Wu Duzi. He realized in an instant that they were no match for Chu Fengmian in this sword formation. This spiritual sword was enough to cause great harm to them, let alone this spiritual sword that was inexhaustible. They could only run away, otherwise they would definitely die under this sword formation today. Invincible Tao. Invincible 9 forms. Sword. Saber. Spear. Axe. Hammer. Claw. Spear. Halberd. Bow. Zhao Wudi's invincible Tao was condensed to the extreme. 9 invincible weapons were condensed and bombarded at the sword formation at the same time. He wanted to forcefully break an opening. However, Chu Fengmian would not give him such a chance. Trying to escape? 10,000 swords in one. Demon Slayer sword formation. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and countless spiritual swords condensed together, forming a giant sword that was 1,000 meters long. As the giant sword fell, the sword edge flashed, and the 9 invincible weapons were instantly destroyed. Zhao Wudi's invincible Tao could not compete with Chu Fengmian's sword Tao. The moment the giant sword fell, it was as if heaven and earth were about to be destroyed. No! We are all overlords of a region. Peak saints, existences that are one step away from becoming immortal and indestructible. How can we be defeated? Fengxingzi and Wu Duzi's faces were filled with madness, and they tried their best to resist. However, any resistance they put up was meaningless in the face of the 1,000-meter-long greatsword. As the sword flashed past, the bodies of the two were instantly killed. Their bodies were completely obliterated, leaving only 2 heads behind. Chapter 400. This was the son of the wind and the son of voodoo. 2 pinnacle saints died in Chu Fengmian's hands just like that. This young master's strength, what level has he reached? The ancient dragon turtle raised its head and looked at the scene in the sky. It was already stammering, not knowing what to say. These two weren't weaklings. 2 pinnacle saints, invincible figures in victorious Wu country, died in Chu Fengmian's hands just like that. The remaining Zhao Wudi's face was also extremely panicked. Although these 2 were far weaker than him, they were still pinnacle saints after all. Yet, they died just like that. The 3 of them couldn't contend against Chu Fengmian. Now that he was the only one left, how could he contend against Chu Fengmian? Fight! Zhao Wudi raised his head and looked at the 1,000-meter-long giant sword descending. His eyes revealed a trace of sword intent. Suddenly, the spiritual power on his body surged crazily. The dark clouds in the sky immediately scattered, and then the entire horizon turned into countless tribulation clouds. Life and death tribulation. Zhao Wudi summoned his full strength and summoned the life and death tribulation. He originally didn't plan to pass the life and death tribulation, but now, this was his last resort. Zhao Wudi didn't plan to directly break through the life and death tribulation. Although he could easily pass it, the more he accumulated in the divine power realm, the greater the benefits of passing the life and death tribulation. Therefore, Zhao Wudi didn't want to pass the life and death tribulation until the last moment. Only then could he obtain the most benefits. But now, in front of Chu Fengmian's 1,000-meter-long giant sword, if he didn't break through, he would have no way to contend against Chu Fengmian. Now, Zhao Wudi was forced into a desperate situation. He planned to directly pass the life and death tribulation and step into the life and death realm to deal with Chu Fengmian. Once he stepped into the life and death realm, Zhao Wudi's strength would immediately skyrocket by 10 times. At that time, it would be difficult for Chu Fengmian to deal with him. Want to break through the life and death tribulation? Chu Fengmian saw through Zhao Wudi's actions with a glance. The moment the tribulation clouds condensed, his figure moved. Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly flew into the sky and arrived at the tribulation cloud. Immediately, boundless killing intent erupted. The scarlet flame sword in his hand condensed a boundless amount of blood qi, which transformed into a 10,000-foot-long blood scar, and slashed towards the tribulation clouds. Calamity destruction. Now, Chu Fengmian was going to destroy this life and death calamity. As long as he could destroy the calamity of life and death. Zhao Wudi was unable to step into the life and death realm. This was a drastic measure. Little bastard. He wanted to destroy the tribulation. Not so easy. The invincible god of war. Zhao Wudi's spiritual energy burst out, turning into countless golden rays that flew toward Chu Fengmian, trying to restrain him. The moment this life and death calamity appeared, the spiritual energy in his body started to transform crazily, causing his strength to skyrocket. As long as he could delay them for a while, his strength would increase by a few notches. Demon Slayer Sword Formation. Give me the formation. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and the 1,000-meter-long sword emitted several sword edges, which cut through the countless golden rays. At the same time, Chu Fengmian slashed out a blood scar, which also cut through the tribulation clouds. This slash destroyed more than half of the tribulation clouds, but the remaining power of the tribulation clouds still fused into Zhao Wudi's body. Zhao Wudi's strength crazily rose. Although he had yet to step into the life and death realm, his strength was several times more powerful than before. Little bastard. You made me waste the opportunity of the life and death calamity. Today, I'll definitely kill you. I'll tear your corpse into 10,000 pieces. Zhao Wudi suddenly exploded, and the killing intent in his eyes reached the extreme. Today, Chu Fengmian had destroyed more than half of his life and death calamity, causing him to lose more than half of the benefits of crossing the calamity. Unable to step into the life and death realm in one go, he could only continue to bitterly cultivate. However, everything he had paid today was worth it. As long as he could kill Chu Fengmian and obtain the endless benefits on his body, he would be able to get everything he had paid. Zhao Wudi's figure moved, dodging the Demon Slayer sword formation, and arrived in front of Chu Fengmian in an instant. His invincible Dao was condensed to the extreme. The current Zhao Wudi was a true invincible martial god. Even if I've only crossed half of the life and death calamity, I'm still not someone you can contend against right now. Invincible under the heavens. Zhao Wudi angrily roared. He was really angry. Chu Fengmian had destroyed his life and death calamity, causing all his preparations to go down the drain. Now, his only thought was to kill Chu Fengmian and seize his fortuitous encounter to make up for his losses. Endless spiritual energy erupted from Zhao Wudi's body, which was actually enough to contend against the countless spiritual swords around him. After crossing the life and death calamity, Zhao Wudi's strength was simply no longer the same as before. He had only crossed a small part of the life and death calamity. If Zhao Wudi had completely crossed the life and death calamity, his strength would be several times more terrifying. Life and death calamity was a calamity, but it was also a benefit that warriors yearned for even in their dreams. As long as one crossed the life and death calamity, their strength would skyrocket by 10 times, or even dozens of times. The current Zhao Wudi was infinitely close to the life and death realm, surpassing the divine power realm. Spiritual energy erupted from his body, causing a whirlwind to sweep away the clouds, directly crushing the countless spiritual swords around him. So what if you've crossed the life and death calamity? Today, you'll still die without a doubt. Chu Fengmian sneered and directly went up to meet Zhao Wudi. Even if Zhao Wudi's strength had skyrocketed, he wouldn't be afraid. Zhao Wudi's strength had indeed skyrocketed, but in the life and death calamity just now, Chu Fengmian had also gained some benefits. Half of the power of Zhao Wudi's life and death calamity, the core of which was the power of creation, had been directly absorbed by Chu Fengmian and integrated into the sword embryo. It could be said that Chu Fengmian had directly taken half of Zhao Wudi's benefits. How could Chu Fengmian be afraid of him? You're courting death. I'll let you experience the power of someone who has crossed the life and death calamity. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Zhao Wudi coldly snorted and displayed the invincible divine fist once again. This time, the invincible divine fist that Zhao Wudi had struck out actually condensed a martial god behind him. The martial god's power was added to his body, and when he struck out a punch, it seemed as if the heavens and earth were about to be subdued. With this punch, he wanted to completely suppress and subdue Chu Fengmian. Creation. Chu Fengmian's figure was ice-cold as he indifferently spat out these 2 words. He waved the scarlet flame sword in his hand, and suddenly, a sword chi shot out. This sword chi seemed ordinary, but the moment it was struck out, it engulfed the entire heaven and earth. The sharpness of the invincible divine fist was overshadowed by this sword chi. The 4th night watch ended. Chapter 401. The seemingly inconspicuous sword chi covered the sky the moment it was released. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out along with the sword chi. A deafening explosion took place instantly. The entire heavenly fortune tower was filled with the sound of the explosion. Just a moment ago, the invincible divine fist was still aggressive and wanted to suppress everything. But now, in front of the sword chi, all of its sharpness was covered. The 2 forces faced each other. In an instant, they had clashed thousands of times. The invincible divine fist was directly shattered, and the countless forces within it were all devoured. It was not over yet. The remaining forces were directly condensed into a fist and blasted towards Zhao Wudi. Zhao Wudi was forced to retreat repeatedly. His chest was shattered, and he spat out a lot of blood. Impossible! What kind of power is this? How can it block my invincible divine fist? While retreating rapidly, Zhao Wudi's face was still full of disbelief. He had now passed the life and death tribulation. He was already a half-step life and death realm figure. Not to mention a saint, even a true life and death realm warrior could contend with him. Chu Fengmian was only a wind-controlling realm warrior, and he had not even stepped into the divine power realm. The result of their fight should be obvious. Zhao Wudi had never thought that he would lose. Now that he had forcibly passed the life and death tribulation and his strength had increased, he was still not a match for Chu Fengmian. He could feel that Chu Fengmian's strength was not as good as his. However, the purity of Chu Fengmian's power far surpassed his. Now that Zhao Wudi had advanced to the half-step life and death realm, he could naturally feel the power of fortune on Chu Fengmian's body. However, he did not know where the power of fortune on Chu Fengmian's body came from, and where did it come from. The power of fortune had always been the most mysterious force in the 9 regions. With Zhao Wudi's current knowledge, he was still far from being able to come into contact with it. However, he could feel the power of creation. Where did this kid come from? Not only did he learn the Dragon Clan's martial skills, but he also has such a strange power. With the strength of Wind Control Realm, he is able to contend against half-step life and death realm warriors. Even those monsters from the North Sea Academy might not be able to do so. Zhao Wudi looked at Chu Fengmian and sighed in his heart. Chu Fengmian's aptitude was indeed monstrous. However, his expression quickly returned to normal. So what if his aptitude was monstrous? Geniuses who hadn't matured were meaningless. Today, he was a half-step life and death realm peerless expert. He didn't believe that he couldn't deal with a puny wind-controlling realm martial artist. Chu Fengmian, your aptitude is indeed terrifying. A person like you shouldn't exist in this world. Zhao Wudi's aura was overbearing. He took a step forward and shouted loudly. Today, you will die in my hands. The invincible sun. Zhao Wudi took a big step forward and rushed to Chu Fengmian's face in a flash. Then, he suddenly punched out again. Boom! Another huge explosion sounded out. With Zhao Wudi's current strength, a casual attack from him was enough to shake the heavens and earth. If he returned to the Qin Empire now, he would probably be able to sweep through the Qin Empire within 3 days. His fist punched out in the air. In an instant, it smashed towards Chu Fengmian. He used his strongest power to suppress Chu Fengmian. The invincible Dao was to suppress the opponent. The weaker the opponent, the more powerful Zhao Wudi's invincible Dao would be. He attacked fiercely. In a breath, he threw out hundreds of punches. They covered the sky and the sun, making it impossible for anyone to dodge. The invincible Dao is just a joke. Why would a real invincible person need to use this kind of aura to fight? Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. Facing the countless fist winds that covered the sky, he didn't dodge. Instead, his mind moved. 1,296 drops of ancient battle dragon blood essence boiled in Chu Fengmian's body. The power of the ancient battle dragon blood essence was squeezed to the extreme and erupted with the strongest power. Battle dragon dancing in the firmament. The power of the ancient battle dragon blood essence merged into Chu Fengmian's body and turned him into an ancient battle dragon. Chu Fengmian transformed into an ancient battle dragon. He let out a long roar and rushed to the 9 heavens. The dragon body danced and the fist winds that covered the sky were all broken. The more ancient battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's bloodline, the clearer Chu Fengmian's control over the ancient battle dragon's power. Turning into a dragon and dissolving the fist winds that covered the sky was just a matter of a breath. After dissolving the fist winds that covered the sky, Chu Fengmian withdrew his power. He held the scarlet flame sword and stepped out. Endless killing intent gathered on Chu Fengmian's body. His killing intent soared to the sky. It was like purgatory on earth. Everyone present felt the endless killing intent from Chu Fengmian's body and could not help but tremble in fear. Chu Fengmian's body suddenly flew out. He was shrouded in endless killing intent. Streaks of blood qi also began to condense. It merged with the blade of Chu Fengmian's sword, making the scarlet flame sword look blood-red. Kill! Chu Fengmian lightly spat out the word kill. As soon as the word kill came out, the sword moved accordingly. 10,000 feet of blood mark instantly erupted. Chu Fengmian's sword art of massacre had already been practiced to the point of perfection. Everyone looked at the sky and saw Chu Fengmian's appearance. It was as if the person who made the move was no longer Chu Fengmian. Instead, it was a god of massacre, an ancient god of massacre. This sword was fierce to the extreme. Zhao Wudi's eyes were full of horror. Even his undefeatable Dao began to waver after witnessing the terrifying incident. No! I'm Zhao Wudi. I'm an invincible figure. I'm a half-step life and death realm. How can I lose? Zhao Wudi roared again and again. Endless spiritual energy erupted from his body. The mountains and rivers shook, and the horizon trembled. I'm invincible. I'll never be defeated. Zhao Wudi's mouth spurted out a large amount of blood essence, which began to burn crazily. The spiritual energy in his body began to surge as he made a futile attempt to make a final struggle. The 9 invincible weapons once again condensed into a huge formation, trying to resist the sword art of massacre. Zhao Wudi, you've schemed against me for a long time, and now you want to sneak attack me. Today is the day you die. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. Zhao Wudi could not escape the fate of being killed today even if he resisted. Chu Fengmian would not give Zhao Wudi any chance. His sword art of massacre was the real killing move. Impossible. I won't be defeated. I won't be defeated. Zhao Wudi's body trembled crazily as if he was afraid. He muttered to himself, but the invincible Dao in his body had been shattered. First update today. Thank you for Shang Xinpa's reward. Chapter 402. Zhao Wudi's undefeatable Dao was originally undefeatable in his heart. That was why he had such an aura that brought him endless power. His undefeatable Dao had been completely destroyed by Chu Fengmian. All of his sources of power had been completely destroyed. Die! Chu Fengmian said coldly. Zhao Wudi's death sentence was pronounced. The 10,000 Jianwang blood scar cut through the sky and slashed down. The 9 undefeatable weapons in front of Zhao Wudi were all crushed in an instant. No! Zhao Wudi roared fiercely. His heart was filled with unwillingness, and he wanted to resist. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted. With a thought, the power of the blood scar increased by a lot. In an instant, Zhao Wudi's figure had been completely swallowed by the blood scar. His body suddenly exploded, turning into a bloody mist that was completely devoured by Chu Fengmian. He came here to practice the slaughter sword art. As Chu Fengmian devoured Zhao Wudi's essence blood, Chu Fengmian's killing intent became a lot denser. After all, Zhao Wudi was a half-step life and death expert. If Chu Fengmian hadn't destroyed his life and death calamity, he would have definitely stepped into the life and death realm. His essence blood was definitely more valuable than many heavenly wondrous treasures. Zhao Wudi had fallen. The #1 expert of Qin Empire, a half-step life and death expert who had passed the life and death calamity, had fallen in Chu Fengmian's hands. Countless people below looked at the scene in the sky in a daze. For a moment, they were all stunned. Crossing nearly 2 major realms, killing a half-step life and death expert with the cultivation base of wind-controlling realm. This kind of aptitude was simply monstrous. Such an expert who had passed the life and death calamity died just like that. Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengmian from the side and couldn't help but sigh. Zhao Wudi, such an absolute expert, had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. When Chu Fengmian had just left victorious martial country, a peak saint was enough to force Chu Fengmian to retreat. But now, a half-step life and death expert who had survived the life and death calamity had died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Isn't Jinlin a fish in a pond? Once it encounters a storm, it will transform into a dragon. The growth of Chu Fengmian's strength was much more terrifying than before. Who knows how much Zhao Wudi gained from the ruins of the kingdom of Jiushi? Chu Fengmian made a grabbing motion with his hand towards the bloody mist. Within it, an empty ring was caught by Chu Fengmian. The reason why Zhao Wudi wasn't in the Qin Empire was because he was fighting for the treasures in the ruins of the Jiushi Empire. Since he had returned this time, it was natural that he had gained a lot. Chu Fengmian poured his spiritual energy into the spatial ring. The spatial ring opened, and countless strange objects appeared before Chu Fengmian's eyes. Crack! Just as Chu Fengmian opened the empty ring and took inventory of the items within, a beam of light suddenly flew out. In the empty ring, it was as if something had awakened. Suddenly, spiritual energy erupted, and it turned into a streak of light, ready to fly out. What is this? Trying to escape? Chu Fengmian raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. Suddenly, countless spiritual energy transformed into an inescapable net, surrounding the thing in an instant. However, this thing actually erupted with an extremely vigorous energy. It seemed to be resisting Chu Fengmian, and it actually bombarded the inescapable net that Chu Fengmian had set up. This power? Chu Fengmian's eyes suddenly turned. The vigorous power that erupted from this thing was very familiar to Chu Fengmian. Suddenly, a burst of spiritual energy erupted from Chu Fengmian's empty ring. The Emperor Jar? Chu Fengmian waved his hand and broke the endless spiritual energy that had gathered around the thing. Inside it was the broken remains of a jar. It was exactly the same power as the Emperor jar in Chu Fengmian's hand. Chu Fengmian was surprised at first, and then he was overjoyed. Chu Fengmian had only obtained a fragment of the Emperor jar. It was only a quarter of the real Emperor jar, and the power that erupted was not even 1/10 of the Emperor jar's power. 1/10 of the Emperor jar's power was already so strong that it had helped Chu Fengmian through countless dangers. Zhao Wudi's empty ring actually contained a part of the Emperor jar. However, this Emperor jar was not as good as the one in Chu Fengmian's hand. Obviously, it still had a part of the power. The moment Chu Fengmian opened the empty ring, it actually intended to escape. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian reacted in time and sealed the surrounding space, making it impossible for the Emperor jar to escape. Battle Dragon Power. Coercion. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and he immediately activated the ancient Battle Dragon power in his bloodline. Endless coercion suppressed the Emperor jar. Dragon coercion was one of the most powerful coercion in the 9 regions. However, the mortal Emperor jar wasn't affected in the slightest when the Battle Dragon's might pressed down on it. As expected of an extreme path immoral weapon. An extreme path immoral weapon with power is indeed much more difficult to deal with. The Battle Dragon coercion had no effect on the fragment of the Emperor jar. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Fortunately, the first fragment that Chu Fengmian obtained did not contain much power, so Chu Fengmian was able to refine it immediately. If the fragment of the Emperor jar had power at that time, given Chu Fengmian's strength at that time, it would have been able to escape in an instant. Then, Chu Fengmian would have been like a cooked duck flying away. However, Chu Fengmian's strength was not what it used to be. Even though the Battle Dragon coercion could not suppress it, Chu Fengmian's expression did not change at all. Now that he had an even greater power, he could use it to suppress the Emperor jar. Power of creation. Condense. Chu Fengmian's mind communicated with the sword embryo, and suddenly, waves of power of creation burst out. The force of creation immediately turned into a 7-floored pagoda suppressing Qin Nan. The fragment of the Emperor jar obviously still wanted to resist, but under the 7-story pagoda, its power was suppressed to the extreme and could not be released at all. Subdue. Chu Fengmian snorted coldly. The power of the 7-story pagoda increased by several times. Immediately, the power of the fragment of the Emperor jar was completely subdued and fell into Chu Fengmian's hands. Chu Fengmian made a prompt decision and integrated a stream of spiritual energy into the fragment of the Emperor jar. Immediately, the fragment of the Emperor jar was subdued by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian finally breathed a sigh of relief. It was not easy to obtain the fragment of the Emperor jar. If it flew away in front of Chu Fengmian would really want to cry. However, this was only the first step. What Chu Fengmian needed to do now was to restore the power of the Emperor jar. Chapter 403. Now that Chu Fengmian had the 2 fragments of the Emperor jar, he could combine them and restore more of the jar's power. The addition of the fragments of the Emperor jar wasn't as simple as 1 + 1. Every fragment could restore twice the power. If Chu Fengmian could obtain all the fragments of the Emperor jar and recondense it, it would be a great adventure for him. After all, the Emperor jar was an ancient human emperor's spirit tool, an extreme immoral weapon. If he could obtain the Emperor jar, he would be able to kill a life and death expert with ease. However, this was just a thought. Chu Fengmian had only obtained half of the fragments of the Emperor jar, and the other half was nowhere to be found. Moreover, even if he was given a complete Emperor jar, he wouldn't be able to activate it with his current strength. Even a life and death expert couldn't activate a complete extreme immoral weapon. Chu Fengmian was lucky enough to obtain this half of the fragment. It was actually obtained by Zhao Wudi, and then Zhao Wudi took the initiative to throw away his life. Only then did Chu Fengmian obtain it. The other fragments were nowhere to be found. In the vast 9 domains, finding all of them was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. However, even if I can gather half of them, it's still a great opportunity. Chu Fengmian looked at the 2 fragments of the Emperor jar in his hand and shot out a stream of spiritual energy. Under this stream of spiritual energy, the 2 fragments of the Emperor jar began to fuse and condense. The Emperor jar was broken in the ancient times for unknown reasons, but it was still of the same origin. With Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy, the 2 fragments began to fuse. The spiritual energy within was also rising steadily. Fortunately, this Xiao Wudi didn't activate the power of the Emperor jar. Otherwise, if he suddenly used it to launch a sneak attack, although he wouldn't be able to defeat me, he would still have a chance to escape unscathed. Chu Fengmian controlled his spiritual energy to fuse the 2 fragments of the Emperor jar as he thought inwardly. Although this was only a fragment of the Emperor jar, it was enough to drain the spiritual energy of a half-step life and death expert. If Chu Fengmian didn't have the divine vein, he wouldn't have dared to activate it. However, even with the support of the divine vein, Chu Fengmian still had a breath of time to activate it. As for Xiao Wudi, it was even more impossible for him to activate the Emperor's jar. With his spiritual energy, he was far from being able to activate it. These 2 fragments of the Emperor jar are of the same origin. There's no rejection when they fuse, there's a feeling of success. Chu Fengmian felt that the 2 fragments of the Emperor jar in his hand had already fused into one. Although its appearance didn't seem to have changed much, and it was still a broken jar, the power contained within was several times stronger than the previous 2 added together. The Emperor Fengmian's power, the Emperor jar jars. Chu Fengmian's, This was a great opportunity. Xiao Wudi had been frantically searching for treasures in the ancient ruins of Jiushi Nation, and had even obtained the Emperor jar. Now, it had all fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. The Emperor jar's strength meant that Chu Fengmian had a new trump card. Even if a true life and death expert came, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be afraid. What kind of spiritual weapon is this? How can it be so strong? It's even stronger than the rich lush monument? Han Yueli blinked as she looked at Chu Fengmian. She couldn't help but ask. She knew that Chu Fengmian had the rich lush monument, a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Now, the Emperor jar's power was even stronger than the rich lush monument. This is the Emperor jar, an extreme immortal weapon. It's just a fragment. Compared to an extreme immortal weapon, it's still far from it. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He didn't hide anything from Han Yueli, extreme immortal weapon. These words caused Han Yueli's heart to tremble. An extreme immortal weapon was a legendary existence. Now, it was right in front of her eyes. Although it was just a fragment, it was indeed an extreme immortal weapon. This is an opportunity one encountered in Qin Emperor Nation. There's no need to talk about it now. Chu Fengmian looked at Han Yueli and said calmly. All of a sudden, the surrounding space shattered, and one figure after another walked out. There were dozens of them, and all of them were saints. What? Why are there so many saints here? Dozens of saints? Even the entire victorious martial nation doesn't have that many. Suddenly, a surprised voice came from below. There were actually dozens of voices that suddenly appeared. Even Han Yueli's expression abruptly changed and her nerves immediately tensed up. A few dozen saints were an enormous force that was sufficient to destroy a kingdom. Their appearance caused everyone to feel great danger. Don't worry. Looking at the nervous Han Yueli next to him, Chu Fengmian suddenly said calmly. The dozens of saints appeared and looked around. When they saw Chu Fengmian, they walked over and knelt down. Chief Commander. These dozens of saints were all from Qin Emperor Army and Destruction Army. Now that Chu Fengmian had called them, they all rushed over. What? The dozens of saints knelt down in front of Chu Fengmian. This scene was extremely shocking in the eyes of others. These were all saints, dozens of them, but all of them were kneeling in front of Chu Fengmian. These people are all the young master's subordinates? The primordial dragon turtle opened its mouth and said in disbelief. A saint was a domineering existence in some small countries. Now, these people had all submitted to Chu Fengmian. These saints all had the primordial battle dragon blood essence bestowed by Chu Fengmian. It was impossible for them to resist. They all submitted to him wholeheartedly. Sword Slayer King. Chu Fengmian glanced at the saints kneeling on the ground and suddenly spoke. One of them stood up and walked out. Young master. Sword Slayer King, take your men and subdue Victorious Martial Academy, Candle Flame Sect, Elis Sect, and 3 Immoral Island. Turn their disciples into slaves. Anyone who dares to resist will be killed. Chu Fengmian said coldly. Since these forces dared to besiege the Han Snow Pavilion, they must pay the price. Yes. Sword Slayer King took the order and scattered with countless saints. Today, Chu Fengmian would completely unify Victorious Martial Nation. Let's go. Chu Fengmian called Han Yueli and took her away. At the same time, Chu Fengmian took the Saint of Beimang Academy. Chapter 404. Cold Snow Pavilion, a secret room. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli were sitting on a chair, while the Saint Envoy of the North Sea Academy was kneeling on the ground. He had been completely subdued by Chu Fengmian and was sealed by the heavenly death seal. He couldn't resist Chu Fengmian from the bottom of his heart and directly knelt on the ground. Your identity, name, origin, and why did you come to Victorious Martial Country? Chu Fengmian looked at the young man and coldly snorted. To the North Sea Academy, this tiny Victorious Martial Country wasn't even worth an ant. Being targeted by a colossus like the North Sea Academy, Chu Fengmian didn't have the mood to relax. With his strength, he was far from being able to contend against the North Sea Academy. He spared the young man's life because he wanted to see what the North Sea Academy wanted to do. My name is Tuoba Ding, an inner disciple of the North Sea Academy. I came to Victorious Martial Country under the orders of my family to find the Northern Mang Saint Tablet and bring it back. The young man, Tuoba Ding, said respectfully. Although I came to Victorious Martial Country under the name of the North Sea Academy, it's actually an order from my family. Our Tuoba family can be considered to have a place in the North Sea Academy. Is this Northern Mang Saint Tablet worth such a large number of people coming from so far away? Chu Fengmian asked. The Northern Mang Saint Tablet was indeed worth a lot in the northern region. However, according to Chu Fengmian's understanding, it could only allow one to join the North Sea Academy. However, for the people of the North Sea Academy, even the families that had a place in the North Sea Academy, they didn't need to pay so much attention to it. This Northern Mang Saint Tablet doesn't only allow one to join the North Sea Academy, it's actually a cover for the Academy. In fact, the Northern Mang Saint Tablet was left behind by an old ancestor of the North Sea Academy. Whoever obtains it can obtain a supreme inheritance of the Northern Mang Saint Tablet. Tuoba Ding respectfully replied. Therefore, the North Sea Academy spread the news to retrieve the Northern Mang Saint Tablet. This inheritance is extremely important. Even some life and death elders are fighting over it. Oh? Inheritance? Hearing Tuoba Ding's words, Chu Fengmian was slightly surprised. Not many people in the northern region knew about this. Most people only knew that the Northern Mang Sacred Tablet could be exchanged for the qualification to become an inner disciple of the Northern Mang Academy. But now, it seemed like the North Sea Academy was just putting up a front. Their real goal was to collect the North Sea Sacred Tablet in exchange for the inheritance. Even life and death realm experts would fight over this inheritance. Its value was indeed not something that could be exchanged with a small inner court disciple position. So if I enter the Beimang Academy with the Beimang Sacred Badge, I can also obtain the succession? Chu Fengmian asked. Chu Fengmian was also curious about the inheritance of the Northern Sea Holy Land. If it could make life and death experts fight for it, then it must have great benefits. This kind of inheritance could be found in some ancient sections. Therefore, Chu Fengmian wasn't unfamiliar with it. At the very least, some of the ancient inheritances of the 7 great sects would be sought after by experts who had surpassed the life and death realm. The inheritance of the Northern Mang Sacred Ground can only be obtained by the Northern Mang Academy's inner disciples and above. If young Lord wishes to use the Northern Mang Sacred Tablet to obtain the inheritance, you must first join the Northern Mang Academy. Tuoba Ding said respectfully. With young Lord's strength, joining the Northern Mang Academy isn't difficult. Exchanging for the inheritance will also greatly increase young Lord's strength. Indeed. Hearing Tuoba Ding's words, Chu Fengmian nodded. This inheritance was indeed something that outsiders couldn't use. Even if he had the Northern Mang sacred tablet, it seemed that he must first join the Northern Mang Academy. What do I need to do to join the Northern Mang Academy? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. Joining the Northern Mang Academy wasn't something that Chu Fengmian couldn't consider. The current Chu Fengmian was almost invincible in the countless countries around him. If he wanted to take another step forward, he must go to other regions. The Northern Mang Academy had as many experts as clouds. Its strength was close to the 7 great sections. It was the gathering place of all the geniuses in the northern region. Only by going to the Northern Mang Academy could Chu Fengmian obtain true tempering and reach a higher realm. Chu Fengmian originally had the intention of going to the Northern Mang Academy. In such a great force, Chu Fengmian could obtain more tempering and more resources. With the inheritance of the Northern Mang sacred tablet, there was no reason for Chu Fengmian not to go. With young Lord's strength, it's not a problem to join the Northern Mang Academy. However, if you want to join the Northern Mang Academy, you must have a quota. Without a quota, you won't even be qualified to participate in the assessment. Tuoba Ding said. Generally speaking, the Northern Mang Academy will give out countless quotas every year to countless clans in the nearby countries. Only those who have a quota can participate in the assessment. The Northern Mang Academy was different from other forces. It was located in the northern region and had never lacked geniuses. Therefore, the Northern Mang Academy had to ensure that the disciples were loyal and had to have a clear background. Someone like Chu Fengmian who came from a remote area with an unknown background would not be able to join the Northern Mang Academy. Although our Tuoba family has quite a number of quotas every year, we have to compete for them. If young Lord wants to get a quota, you can go to the countries near the Northern Mang Academy. There are some clans that have a quota but have declined and will sell it. Tuoba Ding said. I know some declining clans that will sell the quota. It won't be a problem to buy it. And, that's good. You can leave now. Chu Fengmian nodded and said to Tuoba Ding. Yes. Tuoba Ding stood up respectfully and left. Only Chu Fengmian and Hanuali were left in the secret chamber. You plan to go to the Northern Mang Academy? Hanuali looked at Chu Fengmian and asked directly. That's right. The Northern Mang Academy is the true place for cultivation. There are countless geniuses that can compete and there are countless resources. It's not something some small countries can compare with. Chu Fengmian nodded and said. Not only me. You have to go with me too. Hanuali's realm had reached the 7th level of the Divine Power realm. She was almost invincible in Wuxing country. It would be difficult for her to improve even if she continued to cultivate. Hanuali had the profound cold body, one of the divine bodies of heaven and earth. She was extremely talented. Your strength has reached a bottleneck. The power in your bloodline is now sleeping. It must be awakened. That is your true strength. Before Hanuali could speak, Chu Fengmian said again. Chapter 405. Awaken the bloodline? Hanuali murmured to herself after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. I do feel that there's a dormant power in my body. However, I don't know how to awaken it. After I stepped into the divine force realm and became a saint, this power only awakened a little. However, it's less than 10%. Most of the power is still in a deep slumber. That's right. Most of your bloodline power is dormant. If you awaken it, your aptitude won't be any weaker than mine. You might even be stronger than me. Chu Fengmian nodded. Hanuali's bloodline power was dormant. She was a heavenly divine body, a profound cold body that inherited the innate source. If she awakened it completely, her aptitude would reach a terrifying level. She might even surpass Chu Fengmian. How can I awaken it? Han Yueli asked. She believed that since Chu Fengmian asked, there must be a way. Bloodline fusion. How about using my bloodline with yours? I'm confident that I can awaken the power in your bloodline. Chu Fengmian said calmly. My bloodline isn't an ordinary bloodline. It's the bloodline of the ancient battle dragon. Although it's not an innate bloodline, my power has reached a certain level. If it interacts with the power of your profound cold body, I can awaken your power completely. Innate divine bodies could exchange their bloodlines to fight for power. This was also the reason why some experts kept looking for other geniuses with innate divine bodies even though they had innate divine bodies. However, for them, what they needed to do wasn't to exchange their bloodlines but to plunder the power of the innate divine bodies. Directly taking the power was much stronger than exchanging it. But Chu Fengmian couldn't do such a thing. With Chu Fengmian's character, he absolutely wouldn't snatch other people's Xiantian power for the sake of power. Unless it was an enemy of Chu Fengmian wouldn't hesitate to attack. Although the innate power was powerful, it was easy to be plundered by others. The Crown Prince's engagement also wanted to take the innate power of Han Yueli. All right, my bloodline is indeed still in a deep slumber. If my bloodline power can be completely awakened, I can also take another step forward and share your burdens. Han Yueli said decisively after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. This was done without any hesitation or consideration. Aren't you afraid that I'll steal your bloodline? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised to see Han Yueli give such a straightforward answer. This kind of innate godly body could easily be seized by others. If Chu Fengmian did something, he could easily obtain Han Yueli's bloodline. If you wanted to do that, you could have done it long ago. You wouldn't have saved me back then. Han Yueli blushed and said with a smile. Let's begin. I can't wait. All right. Chu Fengmian nodded. With a sudden thought, a few drops of battle dragon blood were condensed at the tip of his finger, which was inserted into Han Yueli's body. Don't resist, I will activate the profound cold power in your bloodline. Chu Fengmian said softly. All of his thoughts were integrated into the few drops of battle dragon blood essence, and all of a sudden, they entered Han Yueli's body. As soon as the battle dragon blood essence entered Han Yueli's body, a profound cold power burst out from the deepest layer of her bloodline. The endless cold air was simply going to freeze people to death. Han Yueli closed her eyes tightly. Her clothes were shattered by the cold air. Under the cold air, even the clothes of a spiritual weapon could not withstand it. The two of them became naked in an instant, but they were not aware of it. The ancient battle dragon blood essence in Chu Fengmian's body was fully activated to resist the endless cold air. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian was already prepared. His body was already protected by the creation strength. At the same time, the battle dragon blood essence that Chu Fengmian inserted into Han Yueli's body began to communicate with it, completely awakening the power in Han Yueli's body. Boom! Waves of spiritual power burst out and engulfed the entire secret chamber. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli sat in the secret chamber, activating the power in Han Yueli's body at every moment. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. A total of 7 days had passed. The cold air that emerged from Han Yueli's body had reached its peak. Although her appearance had not changed, Han Yueli now looked like an ice goddess. Her temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. Her realm was still at the 7th level of the divine power realm, but her power was several times stronger than before, more than 10 times stronger. Is this the power after awakening? After a long while, Han Yueli opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with shock. She already felt that her power was more than 10 times stronger than before. Such an earth-shattering change had taken place in 7 days. This was the moment when the innate godly body's power was completely activated. I can feel that I'm strong enough to fight a true peak saint. Peak saint? With your current realm, I'm afraid that some half-step life and death realm martial artists can be killed. Chu Fengmian's eyes also slowly opened as he said with a smile. Activating the power of the innate godly body was not that easy. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian understood the mystic cold body, so it progressed so smoothly. It's all thanks to you. Han Yueli looked at Chu Fengmian with a complicated expression. Chu Fengmian's appearance had saved her. First, he helped her end her engagement with the crown prince. Now, because of Chu Fengmian, she had awakened the power in her bloodline. It could be said that her current achievements could not be separated from Chu Fengmian. I've said that you're my woman. What's the big deal about this? Chu Fengmian said with a smile. Moreover, I've also benefited a lot from it. The fusion of our bloodlines has also improved my strength. Although Chu Fengmian's improvement in strength was not as obvious as Han Yueli's, he had also obtained a part of the mystic cold body, so he could be considered half of the mystic cold body. In addition to the power of the ancient battle dragon bloodline, Chu Fengmian's aptitude was not any worse than some innate godly bodies. This was also a great benefit to him. Let's go. Chu Fengmian stood up and realized that there was nothing above him. His face stiffened slightly, and he condensed his spiritual power into a long gown. Han Yueli also noticed at this moment. Her face could not help but redden. She condensed a long gown and left the secret chamber with Chu Fengmian. Chapter 406. Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli were cultivating in the secret chamber, their bloodlines intertwining. Martial Victory Country had undergone earth-shaking changes. The three great sects in Martial Victory Academy had been completely subdued. Under the pressure of Qin Shi Huang Army and Destruction Army, all the disciples of the three great sects in Martial Victory Academy had submitted, not daring to resist. Young Master. Sword Slayer King had been waiting outside for a long time. Seeing Chu Fengmian come out, he knelt down respectfully and said, "The disciples of the three great sects in Martial Victory Academy have all been subdued and reduced to slaves. Not bad. You've done well." Chu Fengmian looked at Sword Slayer King. With a thought, a drop of golden blood condensed on his fingertip and flew towards Sword Slayer King. "This is a reward for you." Chu Fengmian had always been fair in his rewards and punishments. Since Sword Slayer King had always been loyal, Chu Fengmian naturally wouldn't shortchange him. "Many thanks, young master." Sword Slayer King didn't decline the drop of golden blood. He had once refined a drop of ancient battle dragon essence blood, so he naturally knew the benefits of it. He repeatedly bowed and took the drop of golden blood, swallowing it in one go. His bloodline immediately improved, and his strength advanced to the 8th level of the divine power realm. With the bloodline power bestowed by Chu Fengmian, his strength was enough to contend with a true 9th level divine power realm saint. In this way, Sword Slayer King wouldn't be too far away from entering the life and death realm and surviving the great calamity. Also, the peak saints of the three great sects in Martial Victory Academy want to meet with young master. After refining the golden blood, Sword Slayer King raised his head and said to Chu Fengmian, "Oh? Take me to see them." Chu Fengmian said softly. He wasn't surprised. The three great sects in Martial Victory Academy still had some old fellows. Although these peak saints couldn't pose any threat to Chu Fengmian didn't believe that they would submit to him. However, Chu Fengmian didn't believe that they would choose to submit obediently. Therefore, it was better for Chu Fengmian to personally deal with them. That way, he wouldn't have any worries. After dealing with these people, Chu Fengmian could go to the North Sea Academy with Han Yueli. The Sword Slayer King brought Chu Fengmian to the depths of the void. There were 4 old men who had been waiting for a long time. These 4 people were all pinnacle saints, and Chu Fengmian had seen 2 of them before. One was the founding elder of Wuxing Academy, Saint Xuemo, and the other was the ancestor of Cold Snow School, Saint Han Ning. As for the other 2 pinnacle saints, although Chu Fengmian had never seen them before, he could tell that they were the old ancestors of the Candle Flame sect and the Aeolus sect. "Why do you all want to see this Chu?" Chu Fengmian stepped into the void, glanced at the 4 people, and said calmly. "Chu Fengmian, there's no need for you to play dumb. Now that you're so powerful, the disciples of the Martial Victory Institute and the other 3 sects are willing to submit to you. However, the 4 of us are all peak saints, and it's impossible for us to submit to anyone. A voice suddenly sounded. Saint Shueimo's eyes flickered as he looked at Chu Fengmian. That's right, we're all old ancestors. There's no way we'll submit to you. At most, we can assist you, but you can't control us. The other peak saint, the old ancestor of the Eelis sect, also spoke. His eyes flickered as he looked at Chu Fengmian, and there was a hint of killing intent in his words. Kid, if you don't agree to our request today, we'll kick up a fuss. You won't be able to stop us with just a few of your underlings. So you're saying that you want to rebel? Chu Fengmian's eyes were calm as he glanced at the 4 people, and he said slowly. Rebel? We're just giving you a piece of advice. There's no way we'll submit to you now. If you know what's good for you, we can still submit to you on the surface and help you manage some of the sex affairs. The old ancestor of the Candle Flame sect said fiercely. But if you don't know what's good for you, then don't blame us for being merciless. The old ancestor of the Freezing Snow Pavilion, Han Ning, who had been silent all this while, couldn't help but nod her head. Although she didn't say anything, her current expression showed that she agreed with the 4 people's words. Don't know what's good for me? Be merciless? Today, I'd like to see what kind of ability the 4 of you have to threaten me. Chu Fengmian sneered and suddenly waved his hand. A huge wave of spiritual energy suddenly condensed and turned into an incomparably huge palm that pressed down on them. Damned kid! You're too arrogant. We're all peak saints and old ancestors. Why would we be afraid of you? Saint Shueimo looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily. He condensed his spiritual energy and suddenly attacked. In the void, countless inks suddenly appeared. The inks turned into ferocious beasts and suddenly pounced on Chu Fengmian. The other 3 pinnacle saints also attacked at the same time. Streaks of spiritual power blasted toward Chu Fengmian. The 4 of them joined forces and wanted to fight against Chu Fengmian. You're overestimating yourselves. Chu Fengmian coldly snorted, his eyes full of disdain. With a thought, he condensed even more power in his palm. As the palm fell, the countless martial skills that the 4 of them used together were all destroyed and suppressed. The strength of the 4 of them was far from Zhao Wudi's. Now, they still wanted to fight against Chu Fengmian. They were mercilessly suppressed by Chu Fengmian. The huge spiritual energy pressed down on the 4 of them, causing them to kneel on the ground. I can even kill a half-step life and death realm martial artist. You old fellows want to fight against me and threaten me? Chu Fengmian coldly looked at the 4 of them. With a move of his palm, a black spiritual energy condensed. This black spiritual energy immediately turned into 4 heavenly death seals and engraved into the depths of their hearts. Don't even think about it. Saint Shueimo resisted with all his might. Before his voice died away, his expression changed in an instant, becoming incomparably respectful. Under the heavenly death seals, their minds changed. They wholeheartedly submitted to Chu Fengmian, unable to resist. We're willing to submit to young master. The 4 of them said in unison, their expressions incomparably respectful. Seeing Chu Fengmian subduing the 4 peak saints so easily, Sword Slayer King's expression froze. This kind of strength was simply beyond his imagination. I'll leave these 4 to you. I'm going to the North Sea Academy. You'll be in charge of countless things in the future. After subduing the 4, Chu Fengmian directly said to Sword Slayer King. Without waiting for Sword Slayer King's reply, Chu Fengmian's figure had already disappeared into the void. Chapter 407. After arranging everything, Chu Fengmian left with Han Yueli into Ubading. Wushan country had the protection of the Sword Slayer King and the 4 peak saints, so it was safe. Chu Fengmian left with peace of mind. Now, Chu Fengmian was traveling through space with Han Yueli into Ubading. They crossed countless countries and were ready to go to the Beimang Academy. The Beimang Academy was vast and boundless. The distance between Wushan Country and the Beimang Academy was more than 100 countries. Even with Chu Fengmian's full speed, he would need to fly for several months or even a year. Moreover, there were many dangerous places along the way. Even though Chu Fengmian had the holy pulse and endless spiritual power, it was still too dangerous to cross countless countries directly. Therefore, Chu Fengmian decided to go to the largest country nearby, the Spring City Country. In the Spring City Country, there was a teleportation formation to other countries. Using the teleportation formation, one only needed to spend a certain amount of money to go to a place thousands of miles away in an instant. Moreover, one could avoid danger along the way. Tuoba Ding came to Wushan Country through the teleportation formation. However, there was still some distance between the Jianwang Country and the Spring City Country. Chu Fengmian took Tuoba Ding and Hanueli and traveled through the void. Tuoba Ding, how many experts are there in the Beimang Academy? And where did the seed of chaos in your body come from? Chu Fengmian asked Tuoba Ding as they traveled through the void. Since he was going to the Beimang Academy, he naturally had to understand the situation there. Chu Fengmian was extremely wary of the seed of chaos in Tuoba Ding's body. The appearance of the seed of chaos meant that there was a warrior with the chaotic divine body in the Beimang Academy. The chaotic divine body was one of the strongest divine bodies in the 9 regions. It was one of the best, and it was much stronger than Hanueli's profound cold body. It was even more powerful than Chu Fengmian's ancient war dragon bloodline. Chu Fengmian had to be on guard against such an unknown existence. Our Northern Mang Academy is the biggest sect in the northern region. It's a real giant. Although I'm an inner disciple, I don't know much about it because there are seed disciples and core disciples above me. These seed disciples and core disciples are the real elites of the Northern Mang Academy. Tuoba Ding reported truthfully. I don't know how many experts there are, but the elders of our North Mang Academy are all life and death experts. It's even said that some of the old antiques have even surpassed the life and death realm. As for the Chaos Seed, it's actually called a holy seed in our Northern Mang Academy. It came from a core disciple of our Northern Mang Academy, Yi Tianjun. The moment Yi Tianjun's name was mentioned, Tuoba Ding's eyes were filled with fear. Yi Tianjun is a true giant in the Northern Mang Academy. It's said that his strength has already reached the upper stages of the life and death realm. His power index has even surpassed 1,000, surpassing countless elders. Countless elders of the Northern Mang Academy regard him highly. He even established a huge force, the Saint Party. I'm one of the members of the Saint Party. As long as a disciple joins the Saint Party, they'll get a holy seed as their source of power. Tuoba Ding said respectfully. Source of power? Hearing Tuoba Ding's words, Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sneer a few times. With a thought, the chaos seed appeared in his palm. This chaos seed isn't a source of power. Although it can burst out a certain amount of power, it's actually absorbing your power and seizing your cultivation base for its own use. Moreover, the chaos seed planted in your body is actually a restriction. Your life will be controlled by others. Chu Fengmian said. Don't you feel that after the chaos seed left your body, your cultivation progress has become much faster? Actually, many of us disciples know this. Tuoba Ding couldn't help but smile bitterly after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. However, this isn't voluntary. The Saint Party's position is very high in the Northern Mang Academy. If we're chosen by them and don't choose to join them, I'm afraid we'll be targeted everywhere. At that time, we won't get any resources. In order to obtain resources, we can't resist even if we know the disadvantages of the Saint Party. Although the Northern Mang Academy had a lot of resources, there were also many geniuses competing for them. Competition was unavoidable if one wanted to obtain resources. Only by joining the Saint Party could they obtain more resources in the Northern Mang Academy. Even if they knew the disadvantages of the Saint Party, they could only obediently submit and join the Saint Party. Right, what's your Northern Mang Academy's power index? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked. He had just heard Tuoba Ding mention the power index. This power index is actually a special calculation method of our Northern Mang Academy. the strength of an ordinary peak saint is a number of 1. For example, I have the strength of 2 peak saints combined. My power index is 2. Tuoba Ding explained. In our Northern Mang Academy, if the power index reaches 1, one can be promoted to an inner disciple. If the power index reaches 10, one can be promoted to a seed disciple. Oh? That's a bit interesting. Hearing Tuoba Ding's explanation, Chu Fengmian's eyes couldn't help but light up. This was actually a method of calculating power as a number. This concept didn't exist 10,000 years ago. It seemed like the Northern Mang Academy wasn't without a method to rise up and become a behemoth close to the 7 great sects in the northern region. At least, this power index alone was extremely convenient. It was enough to make one's eyes light up. With this, one could clearly understand the other party's strength. Then, what level has my strength reached? Chu Fengmian's mind flickered as he displayed his spiritual power. A wave of pressure directly pressed down on Tuoba Ding. This, young master's power index has probably surpassed 10. It's enough to contend with a martial artist who has just stepped into the life and death realm. Sensing Chu Fengmian's power, Tuoba Ding broke out in cold sweat. This level of strength had far surpassed his own. Ordinary experts who had just stepped into the life and death realm had a power index of 10. In other words, the strength Chu Fengmian had just displayed was enough to contend with an ordinary first-layer life and death realm martial artist. Chapter 408. Is this the strength of an ordinary life and death realm warrior? Hearing Tuoba Ding's words, Chu Fengmian thought inwardly. The strength he had just displayed was not even 1/3 of his actual strength. It seemed that Chu Fengmian's current strength was enough to contend with ordinary life and death realm warriors. Chu Fengmian was not surprised by this result. When he was fighting against Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he was already strong enough to contend with the best among the peak saints. Now that Chu Fengmian had obtained the power of fortune and a part of Hanyu Li's profound cold force, his strength had greatly increased. Compared to an ordinary life and death realm warrior, it was nothing. However, this strength is nothing in the North Sea Academy. It seems that I have to keep a low profile if I want to enter the academy. Chu Fengmian thought inwardly. According to this power index, Yi Tianjun of the Beimang Academy had the power of 1,000 pinnacle saints. This strength was dozens of times stronger than Chu Fengmian. The current Chu Fengmian was far from being able to contend with him. However, as long as Chu Fengmian entered the North Sea Academy, with his aptitude, he was confident that his strength would soar again. His aptitude was not inferior to any innate divine body. While Chu Fengmian and Tuoba Ding were talking, the space in front of them suddenly shattered. Their figures turned into a ray of light and left the void. This is the Spring City Kingdom? Chu Fengmian left the space and saw a huge city at a glance. Rather than calling this Spring City a country, it was more like an incomparably huge city. At a glance, one could not see the end of it. It was so huge that countless experts were hidden in it. Even with Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness, he could not thoroughly scan the Spring City Kingdom. One could see how huge the Spring City Kingdom was. Just this gigantic city alone was no smaller than the Qin Empire. The population of the city was at least 100 billion. It was simply shocking. Countless warriors came to the Spring City Kingdom and directly descended, passing through the city gate below. The Spring City was also covered with dense restrictions, making it impossible for people to fly. If they wanted to enter, they had to go through the main entrance. Given Chu Fengmian's strength, these restrictions couldn't do anything to him. However, Chu Fengmian still descended and entered the city from the front of the city gate. After each of them paid 109 cauldrons of pills, the 3 of them stepped into the Spring City. As soon as they entered the ancient city, they saw countless shops selling medicinal pills, spirit tools. There were countless shops as far as the eye could see. The Spring City Kingdom was indeed much wealthier than the Qin Kingdom. This was the true flourishing kingdom of the northern region. In comparison, the Qin Empire was just a small and remote place, while the Wuxing Empire was just a small and unknown place. Chu Fengmian scanned his surroundings and didn't find anything that caught his attention, so he asked directly, "Where is this teleportation array?" Tuoba Ding looked at Chu Fengmian and answered, "Young master, the teleportation formation that leads to the vicinity of the Beimang Academy is in the City Lord's mansion." "Go over," Chu Fengmian said directly and followed Tuoba Ding all the way to the City Lord's mansion. The City Lord's mansion was huge, and there were teleportation formations that led to several other big cities. When Chu Fengmian arrived, a large number of warriors had already gathered in front of the City Lord's mansion. Apparently, they were all waiting to use the teleportation formation. The Beimang Academy will open its doors to recruit disciples in a month's time. These people should be going there to try their luck. When Tuoba Ding saw the scene, he did not find it strange at all and explained to him. Most of the warriors who had gathered were not weak. The weakest among them was at least in the wind-controlling realm. Some of the outstanding ones had even stepped into the divine power realm at a young age and became saints. These warriors were not rogue cultivators. Many of them were geniuses from the big families of the surrounding countries. Joining the Beimang Academy, even if they were just an inner disciple, would be more honorable than the emperor of some small countries. Joining the Beimang Academy not only brought status, but also opportunities in the future. Young warriors with some aptitude all wanted to join the academy. "Let's also wait here slowly." Chu Fengmian glanced at the crowd and slowly said. The three of them walked into the crowd, moving along with the bustling crowd. "Why are there so many people here today?" "The Beimang Academy is going to open its doors to recruit disciples. Countless geniuses from the surrounding countries are planning to go to the Beimang Academy to try their luck." In front of Chu Fengmian, several young warriors were discussing. Apparently, they were bored from waiting and started chatting. "Trying their luck? I'm afraid they can't even find a spot. Maybe they have some connections. After all, if they have high aptitude, some families are willing to give them a spot. These people dare to call themselves geniuses? In the Beimang Academy, they are not even comparable to some odd job disciples. Even if they can enter, they can only be an odd job disciple at most. But even if they are just odd job disciples, their resources are better than ours. If they are lucky enough to be promoted to outer disciple, they will be a big shot when they return to our country. If they are inner disciples, even the emperor will have to bow to us." A young warrior said with longing. "Stop dreaming. As long as we can get in and become an outer disciple, we will be safe and won't have to worry about resources anymore." Another young martial artist said emotionlessly. "This Beimang Academy is indeed an overlord. It can actually attract so many warriors to participate in the assessment." Chu Fengmian looked at the countless people talking and calmly said. Joining the Northern Mang Academy was akin to hugging a big tree tightly. There were countless benefits. No wonder so many people wanted to join. Among these people, less than 1 in 10,000 can enter the Beimang Academy. At most, they will be odd job disciples. It will be difficult to become an outer disciple. Tuoba Ding glanced at the surroundings and said with disdain. Although Tuoba Ding was just an ant in front of Chu Fengmian, he was still a high existence in front of these people. Naturally, he was disdainful. Hearing Tuoba Ding's words, Chu Fengmian only smiled. Indeed, less than 1 in 10,000 could enter the Beimang Academy. But as long as there was a chance, it would still attract countless warriors to try. Chapter 409. 6 hours later, Chu Fengmian and his group followed the crowd and arrived at the City Lord Mansion. At a glance, Chu Fengmian could already see one of the huge formations. The aura of the teleportation array was extremely ancient. It had existed for tens of thousands of years and was created by the Almighty of the ancient times. In the current era, such means had long disappeared. The experts of the Spring City Kingdom could only repair it but could not build it. You bunch of trash. Get lost. All of a sudden, a feminine voice rang out behind Chu Fengmian. It was the voice of a woman. Chu Fengmian turned around and saw a woman in blue. She looked to be in her early 20s and was emitting spiritual energy. Her strength was at the 7th level of the divine power realm. Chu Fengmian could feel that the strength of the woman in blue was far beyond her realm. At least, she was not weaker than Tuoba Ding. She was much stronger than ordinary peak saints. She could be considered a genius with great aptitude. You bunch of trash, don't block the way here. Get lost and don't waste my time. The woman in blue looked at the crowd in the city lord mansion and suddenly pointed at the countless warriors and shouted angrily. What? Damn it. Hearing the arrogant words of the woman in blue, countless warriors looked over. However, when they sensed the strength of the woman in blue, none of them dared to speak. A 7th level of the divine power realm was comparable to the old ancestors of some small forces. They were far from being able to contend with her. Although some of the warriors were angry, they could only step aside and open up a path for the blue-clothed woman to walk through. Which force is this unruly woman from? Damn it. Her strength is not bad. We are not her match. Forget it. She is strong. Let's avoid her. She will kick a metal plate sooner or later if she is so arrogant. Those cultivators who had retreated one after another were all enraged as they discussed amongst themselves. The woman in blue seemed to have heard these discussions, causing her eyes to turn icy cold. She swept a glance at the cultivators who had just retreated, her eyes filled with contempt. A bunch of trash. How dare you talk about me? If you're not convinced, step forward. As soon as the blue-robed woman spoke, a wave of oppressive might pressed down. The blue-clothed woman's eyes were full of disdain. She did not put the martial artists present in her eyes at all. The pressure was comparable to that of a peak saint. Many weaker cultivators could not help but spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. Miss, aren't you being a little too overbearing? We didn't provoke you, but you're actually pressuring us with your aura. A young man suddenly walked out. The strength of this young man wasn't weak at all. He was at the 8th level of the divine force realm. In terms of cultivation, he was even superior to the blue-clothed lady. However, Chu Fengmian could tell that the young man's foundation was far inferior to the blue-clothed lady's. If they really fought, the young man would probably be easily defeated by the blue-clothed woman. It's the young master of the Zheng clan. This is an expert at the 8th level of the divine force realm. After entering the Beimang Academy, he can fight for the position of an inner disciple. It seems that young Master Zheng is about to make a move. It's good to teach the blue-clothed lady a lesson so that she won't be too arrogant. When some of the martial artists saw young Master Zheng walking out and speaking, they all had the mentality of watching a show. The blue-clothed lady was indeed a little too arrogant. They also wanted to see if there was someone who could teach the blue-clothed lady a lesson. Why? You want to be the one to stand out? You're not qualified to be the one to stand out. The blue-clothed lady glanced at young Master Zheng and snorted coldly. The meaning in her words was that she did not put young Master Zheng in her eyes at all. Her voice was extremely sharp and ear-piercing. She sneered continuously. Her words instantly caused young Master Zheng's expression to change. Boundless anger erupted in his heart. The blue-clothed lady was indeed a little too overbearing. He only came out to persuade her, but he was directly targeted. Young Master Zheng was also a genius. As an 8th level divine force realm saint, he was proud and arrogant. How could he withstand such provocation? Since that's the case, then I'll be the one to seek guidance from you. Young Master Zheng snorted coldly. His figure moved and he directly grabbed at the blue-clothed lady with his claw. Both of his hands turned black and became incomparably hard. In an instant, he grabbed at the blue-clothed lady. Although this move was not a killing move, it was a move made in anger and its power was not weak. He wanted to teach the blue-clothed lady a lesson. Dark Sky Dark Claw. Young Master Zheng is known as the Dark Claw Saint. His Dark Sky Dark Claw is extremely powerful. It's even stronger than an Earth-grade spiritual weapon. Even a peak saint might not be able to withstand it. Young Master Zheng is an almost invincible figure in the same realm. The blue-clothed lady's cultivation is only at the 7th level of the divine force realm. This time, young Master Jing should be able to win easily. Young Master Jing was also a well-known expert in the Spring City country. When they saw him attacking, some of his supporters could not help but speak up. A piece of trash from a remote area. Do you think that you can contend against me just because you have some fortuitous encounters? You want to stand out? Today, I'll let you suffer a little first. I'll let you know the immensity of heaven and earth. The blue-clothed lady looked at young Master Zheng's attack. Facing the dark sky dark claw, she sneered. She waved her hand and countless blood chi gathered in her palm. The blood chi turned into a long whip and lashed out. When the long whip lashed out, young Master Zheng's dark sky dark claw was instantly broken. He could not help but cry out in pain as he was sent flying. What? How is this possible? Young Master Zheng was defeated. Some of the onlookers could not believe what they saw. Young Master Zheng, who was at the 8th level of the divine force realm and could contend against a peak saint, was defeated just like that. He was defeated in one move by the blue-clothed lady. This was simply shocking to countless people. Young Master Zheng was not a nobody. No one would have thought that he would be defeated by the blue-clothed lady in one move. This blue-clothed lady's strength is probably at 3 points of battle strength. She's even stronger than me. Tuoba Ding looked at the blue-clothed lady and his expression changed drastically. The blue-clothed lady's strength was equivalent to 3 points of battle strength. Compared to an ordinary peak saint, she was 3 times stronger. She was only at the 7th level of the divine force realm. With such strength, she was definitely worthy of being called a genius. Chapter 410. All of you, come out. After defeating young Master Zheng with a single move, the lady in blue became even more complacent. She glanced at the crowd and suddenly waved her hand. A few honorable martial artists were pulled out from the crowd. They were the martial artists who had been discussing earlier. You bunch of trash, how dare you talk about me? The lady in blue sneered coldly. She waved her hand, causing the martial artists to scream out in pain as they spat out mouthfuls of blood. Among the blood, there was something else that was spat out. Tongues. The lady in blue tore off the honorable martial artists' tongues. Her method was extremely vicious. Moreover, the wound on their tongues was burned by her spiritual energy. Even with spiritual medicine, it could not be healed. The honorable martial artists had only discussed a little before their tongues were ripped off. Her method could not be described as vicious. It was simply vicious. However, this time, no one dared to speak after seeing the lady in blue's actions. Young Master Zheng had been defeated by the lady in blue with a single move. Young Master Zheng was considered a well-known expert among the younger generation of the Spring City country. Now that young Master Zheng had been defeated in a single move, no one dared to go against the lady in blue. What are you looking at? Get out of my way! The woman in blue roared in a shrill voice. Then, she walked towards the crowd. The crowd involuntarily opened up a path for her to pass. The lady in blue walked over and looked at Chu Fengmian and the others who were standing still. Suddenly, she pointed at Chu Fengmian and said, "Don't you have ears? I asked you to get out of my way. Did you hear me? Damn it!" Tuoba Ding shouted angrily when he heard the lady in blue. He had already planted the heavenly death seal in his heart and submitted to Chu Fengmian wholeheartedly. He was furious when he heard the lady in blue scolding Chu Fengmian. What? Another one who wants to stand out? Do you want to end up like that trash? The lady in blue sneered when she heard Tuoba Ding's words. It seems that there are really people who don't know what's good for them. How dare they block my way? The lady in blue looked at Chu Fengmian and gathered her spiritual energy to attack again. He could tell that Chu Fengmian was the leader of the three. His eyes flickered as he attacked Chu Fengmian. Get out of my way! In her palm, a surge of spiritual energy transformed into a long whip made of blood aura. Then, it lashed out at Chu Fengmian. This whip was formed almost silently. Once it hit someone, at the very least, the skin would split open and the flesh would split open. At the very least, the spirit meridians would be cracked. This sudden lash of the whip was definitely incomparably vicious. Without a single word of disagreement, he directly attacked. This was the so-called rude and unreasonable to the extreme. Ha ha ha, I'll give you a whip to let you know the consequences of blocking my way. Seeing the whip lashing out, the blue-clothed woman laughed loudly. Chu Fengmian's face was expressionless, but his eyes revealed some annoyance. He had no interest in bickering with this blue-clothed woman. Even if she was arrogant and despotic, it had nothing to do with Chu Fengmian. But now, this blue-clothed woman actually went directly to Chu Fengmian's head. She directly attacked and lashed out at Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian was really at the peak of the wind-controlling realm, this long whip of blood aura was enough to beat Chu Fengmian half to death. If others did not offend him, he would not offend them. However, Chu Fengmian was not someone who would be bullied casually. Get out of my way! Chu Fengmian coldly snorted and suddenly spat out a word. This word contained the dragon's might of the war dragon. It was an ancient dragon's roar. A dragon's roar burst out in the street. The blood aura and the long whip of blood aura of the blue-clothed woman was instantly dissolved. It was directly broken, and the endless blood aura was immediately scattered. This dragon's roar restrained all evil things in the world. This kind of blood aura was restrained by the dragon's roar and was immediately dispersed. This dragon's roar directly blasted towards the blue-clothed woman, forcing her to take a few steps back. Although it didn't hurt her, it weakened her aura in an instant. What? You dare to resist? You dare to destroy my martial technique? The blue-clothed woman came back to her senses, looked at Chu Fengmian, and shouted angrily. You actually managed to force me to retreat. Damn it. You are sinful. Anyone who dares to be my enemy must die. As she shouted angrily, the blue-clothed woman condensed an endless amount of spiritual energy, which turned into countless blood aura and condensed into several long whips of blood aura. Once again, she lashed out at Chu Fengmian. Her eyes were full of murderous intent. Each of her moves was full of killing intent, as if she wanted to kill Chu Fengmian directly. She planned to kill him on the street without a word. When the blue-clothed woman saw Chu Fengmian's realm clearly, her expression became even more furious. She was like an angry lion. A little wind-controlling realm ant wants to contend with me because you think you have some fortuitous encounters? Martial technique of the dragon clan? Today, even if you are a real dragon, I will still kill you. The blue-clothed woman was furious, and her murderous intent was not concealed. She was a saint at the 7th level of the divine power realm. She was a genius who could fight across realms. Now, she was forced to retreat by a wind-controlling realm warrior. This was a great humiliation for her. Several long blood-red whips lashed out at Chu Fengmian at the same time. I'll cripple your cultivation first. Then, I will capture you and torture you. This is what you get for going against me. The blue-clothed woman's blood-red whips were aimed at Chu Fengmian's spiritual meridian. She wanted to destroy Chu Fengmian's spiritual meridian and destroy his cultivation. It's over. A wind-controlling realm kid dares to contend with this fierce person. He is simply courting death. To be able to repel the blue-clothed woman in one move, this person's strength is far from a wind-controlling realm warrior. So what? Even young Master Zheng was defeated. Can this kid still contend? This kid is also a genius. Unfortunately, he is going to die in the hands of the blue-clothed woman today. Some of the onlooking warriors could not help but shake their heads. When the blue-clothed woman made her move, the outcome was already determined. They did not believe that a wind-controlling realm warrior could contend with the blue-clothed woman who had defeated young Master Zheng. Destroy my cultivation? Murderous intent emerged in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He had no enmity with the blue-clothed woman. Just now, Chu Fengmian did not ridicule her, but the blue-clothed woman directly attacked Chu Fengmian. Now, she even wanted to destroy Chu Fengmian's cultivation. Such an arrogant character was simply disgusting. Chu Fengmian was not interested in fighting with the blue-clothed woman, but she was unwilling to let him go. 8 chapters today. More chapters tomorrow. Chapter 411. Chu Fengmian didn't want to cause trouble, but he wouldn't allow others to humiliate him. Since that's the case, I'll teach you a lesson. Break it! Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and a burst of spiritual energy burst out. This burst of spiritual energy covered the sky and earth, and it was full of dragon's might. Those blood whips were immediately shattered under the dragon's might. The dragon's might of the war dragon could restrain all evil things, not to mention this little blood whips. The blood whips of the blue-clothed woman were far inferior to Chu Fengmian's slaughter sword technique. It was easily dispelled. Chu Fengmian stood in the same place, and with a wave of his hand, a burst of spiritual energy dissolved the countless blood whips of the blue-clothed woman. This made the countless onlookers feel that it was unbelievable. Even young Master Zheng couldn't withstand this blood whips, but Chu Fengmian stood in the same place and dissolved so many blood whips so easily. This was far from what a wind-resisting realm warrior could do. This person is hiding his strength. This person's strength is actually higher than the blue-clothed woman's. I wonder which country or family's genius he is from. No matter what, it's good to kill this blue-clothed woman's arrogance. Countless onlookers discussed among themselves. They didn't mind watching the show. Hiding his strength? In the eyes of the blue-clothed woman, she could see that Chu Fengmian's realm was indeed at the peak of the wind-resisting realm. It was just that this dragon clan's martial technique was too much to restrain her, causing her countless methods to fail. The dragon clan's martial technique was indeed able to restrain this kind of evil martial technique. However, she was a figure of the divine power realm, and she couldn't deal with a wind-resisting realm ant. Instead, she was easily dissolved. How could she bear this? Boy, do you really think you can contend with me with this dragon clan's martial technique? Today, I'll let you know the consequences of provoking me. The blue-clothed woman screamed. Her voice was very ear-piercing, like a roar. On her body, a burst of spiritual energy suddenly condensed. The strength just now wasn't her full strength. She waved her hand, and suddenly countless warriors around her screamed. Their blood essence was extracted, and all of it condensed in her hand, forming a blood-red demonic claw. The warriors around the blue-clothed woman fell one after another. Their blood essence wasn't empty, and all of them became extremely weak. The blue-clothed woman's method was extremely ruthless. She directly extracted the blood essence of others to replenish her strength. This was simply the style of a devil. You! The surrounding few saints saw the blue-clothed woman. They were all enraged. They stood out, and glared angrily at the blue-clothed woman. The fight between the two of them had even affected other unrelated people. This had already caused public outrage. What? Do you also want your blood essence's blood essence? The blue-clothed woman 9 pills' blood TS 9 pills TTTSB. As many hundreds of 9s. Take these medicinal pills as compensation. Hurry up and scram. You, the saints received the pills. After hesitating for a moment, they left with the warriors whose blood essence had been sucked dry. The blue-clothed woman's strength was indeed powerful, and not easy to deal with. Since she had given out the pills, the saints were not willing to be her enemy. Kid, let's see if your dragon tribe's martial skill is able to resist my blood hands. The blue-clothed woman glared at Chu Fengmian and snapped. A pair of bloody hands directly bombarded Chu Fengmian, as if to take Chu Fengmian's life. Stop it! A shocking yell could be heard all of a sudden. A figure flew out from the city lord's mansion. It was a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance and an extraordinary temperament. It was obvious that he was a powerful expert. As soon as the middle-aged man appeared, he immediately waved his hand and shattered the blood hands that the blue-clothed woman had summoned. It's City Lord Nangong. Even the master of the Spring City Kingdom has been alerted. However, the blue-clothed woman's strength is already comparable to many peak saints. If City Lord Nangong doesn't make a move, I'm afraid no one can stop her. Discussions broke out one after another. City Lord Nangong? Chu Fengmian's eyes also looked at City Lord Nangong. This person was the master of the Spring City. Life and Death Realm. City Lord Nangong's realm was a genuine life and death realm expert. His strength far surpassed Zhao Wudi's. According to his strength index, he had at least 20 points. In terms of pure strength, he was even slightly stronger than Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian had countless fortuitous encounters. Furthermore, he had the ancient battle dragon bloodline and the power of fortune. In a real battle, even if Chu Fengmian couldn't defeat City Lord Nangong, he could still contend against him. Life and Death Realm expert. When the blue-clothed woman saw City Lord Nangong appear and sensed his strength, her arrogant expression became much more restrained. Life and Death Realm experts were something she needed to be wary of. Although her strength far surpassed ordinary peak saints, Life and Death Realm experts, no matter how weak they were, could still easily defeat her. In the 9 regions, strength was status. Facing experts, one could only revere them. Even someone as arrogant as her had to restrain herself now. Everyone here is a young genius preparing to participate in the North Sea Academy's exam. Perhaps, you're all from the same sect. There's no need to have a life and death battle here. City Lord Nangong said with a faint smile. There's a rule in the Spring City. You can exchange pointers, but you must stop at a certain point. If you want a life and death battle, you can leave the Spring City. City Lord Nangong said. Although his tone was calm, the meaning behind it was clear. Life and death battles weren't allowed in the Spring City. His appearance was to calm the battle down. Hearing City Lord Nangong's words, the blue-clothed woman couldn't help but coldly snort. She glanced at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Since that's the case, I'll let you go this time. After speaking, the blue-clothed woman directly walked towards the teleportation array and left. She also understood that there was no need to offend a life and death realm expert for no reason. Thus, she directly chose to leave. Let's go too. Chu Fengmian glanced at Hanueli and Tuoba Ding beside him and said. He didn't feel like arguing with this blue-clothed woman, so he directly called the two of them and prepared to leave. Arriving at the teleportation array, Chu Fengmian paid 1,009 cauldron pills per person and directly teleported. In an instant, the world in front of Chu Fengmian spun. In an instant, he arrived at a country 10,000 miles away. Chapter 412. Chu Fengmian and the others passed through countless countries and used the teleportation formation to go to the Biming Academy. The northern region was so big that it was impossible to measure it. Chu Fengmian used 30 to 40 teleportation formations along the way and gradually arrived at the area near the Biming Academy. If Chu Fengmian were to fly, he might not be able to fly to the Biming Academy even if he was given 10 years. Along the way, Chu Fengmian and the others crossed countless countries and came to a place called the Manyuan Ancient City. The Manyuan Ancient City did not belong to any country and was an important transportation route. The teleportation formation in it could lead to many other countries. The next stop that Chu Fengmian and the others were preparing to go to was the Manyuan Ancient City. Why are there so many people? Chu Fengmian and the others had just come out of the teleportation formation and looked around. The huge Manyuan Ancient City was full of martial artists. It seemed that they were densely packed and were talking from time to time. They did not know why. Tuoba Ding, go and see what happened. Chu Fengmian turned his head and glanced at Tuoba Ding. Yes. Tuoba Ding went over and asked for a while before coming back and saying to Chu Fengmian. The teleportation formation in the Manyuan Ancient City seems to be broken and can't be used now. That's why we are stuck here. The teleportation formation is broken? Chu Fengmian frowned when he heard the news. The teleportation formation was built by the experts of the ancient times. Now that countless years had passed, many of them had fallen into disrepair and might be broken. Although they could be repaired, it would take some time. It would not be a problem for people who were not in a hurry, but Chu Fengmian was in a hurry to go to the Biming Academy. Chu Fengmian calculated that he was not rich before the Biming Academy opened and accepted disciples. Not to mention, Chu Fengmian had to obtain the qualifications to participate in the assessment first. If he was delayed here for a while, he might miss the opportunity to open and accept disciples. Every time the Biming Academy opened and accepted disciples, it would take 3 years. Chu Fengmian did not want to waste 3 years. How far is this place from the next transit station? Chu Fengmian looked at Tuoba Ding and asked. He was still not very familiar with the terrain of the northern region. About 100,000 kilometers. Tuoba Ding said after a slight hesitation. It is not very far from this Manyuan ancient city to the next Xianzhou ancient city. It will not take long to cross over. However, there are quite a number of bandits along the way. They are quite troublesome and not easy to deal with. Bandits? When Chu Fengmian heard Tuoba Ding's words, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. In his opinion, these bandits were warriors without any aptitude. They only had some strength, so they chose to rob others to make a living. However, for normal bandits, the Divine Sea realm was the limit. Even the wind-controlling realm was extremely rare. To them, the wind-controlling realm was far from being a threat. Why did Tuoba Ding say that it was extremely problematic? Young master, there's something you don't know. These bandits aren't actually rebels. They're disciples from the Earth Demon sect, a large sect in the northern region. Tuoba Ding looked at Chu Fengmian and explained slowly. This Earth Demon sect has a great influence in the northern region. However, it is a demonic sect. Their actions are shameful. Therefore, their disciples are usually called bandits. These Earth Demon sect's disciples are not weak. They often occupy mountains and rob people. Many of them are ruthless. Not only do they rob, but they will also kill people and devour their essence blood. This region is the Earth Demon sect's territory. Therefore, it is not easy to deal with them. If you cross rashly, you might encounter their disciples. Earth Demon sect. Chu Fengmian knew this name. This Earth Demon sect was actually one of the demonic sects that split off from the Nine Demon City. After the Nine Demon City became one of the 7 great sects, they couldn't do things that were too ruthless. Therefore, countless experts in the Nine Demon City split off and established countless demonic sects. Although there was no relation between the two sides on the surface, Chu Fengmian knew that this Earth Demon sect was actually under the Nine Demon City. However, this layer of paper had never been broken. This Earth Demon sect was one of the top forces among the countless demonic sects under the Nine Demon City. There was no lack of life and death realm experts in this sect. It was indeed not easy to deal with them. However, generally speaking, life and death realm experts were considered old antiques in the Earth Demon sect. They usually wouldn't take action and would only cultivate in seclusion. Therefore, it wasn't easy to encounter them. Young master, should we wait here for a few days or cross the void and go to Xianzhou ancient city? Tuoba Ding asked from the side. Now that Chu Fengmian was the master, he had to listen to Chu Fengmian. Tuoba Ding's words could only be used as a reference. The one who had to make the decision was still Chu Fengmian. Given my speed, I will only need 5 days to reach Xian province ancient city. If I wait here, it is very likely that I will be delayed, resulting in insufficient time. Chu Fengmian listened to everyone's discussion and knew that the teleportation array would take at least a month to be repaired. Now, Chu Fengmian still had half a month to reach North Sea Academy. The Northern Mang Academy would open its doors and accept disciples in 2 months. If Chu Fengmian were to wait here for a month in vain, it would not be enough time for Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian still needed to find the qualifications to participate in the assessment. Rather than waiting here, he might as well cross the void. It doesn't matter even if we encounter people from the Earth Demon sect. As long as they aren't life and death realm old antiques, I can easily deal with them. Moreover, it's only been 5 days. It's not certain if we can meet them. Chu Fengmian said. Waiting wasn't his character. I agree. Han Yueli, who was standing at the side, also spoke. If they waited here for a month, the teleportation array might not be repaired. It would be better to just travel through the void and head there. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Tuoba Ding nodded and went to buy a map to check the route to Xianzhou Ancient City. Chu Fengmian used his spiritual sense to scan the surroundings and found that many warriors had the same idea as him. If they wasted a month, they might not be able to participate in the assessment of the North Sea Academy. However, there were already many warriors who chose to cross the void to Xianzhou Ancient City. Let's go. After a while, Tuoba Ding came back and checked the route. Chu Fengmian and the others stood up and crossed the void to Xianzhou Ancient City. Chapter 413. Traversing the void wasn't a difficult task for Chu Fengmian. He brought Tuoba Ding and Han Yueli with him as they shuttled through the void. Ordinary warriors would need to rest or consume elixirs to recover their spiritual power after a period of time when traversing the void. After all, traversing the void consumed a large amount of spiritual power at every moment. Even pinnacle saints or life and death realm warriors couldn't withstand the constant consumption of spiritual power. There would be a time when they would run out of spiritual power. Therefore, they had to rest after a period of time. As a result, their speed would be much slower. Some life and death realm warriors would need at least 10 days to half a month to traverse this distance. However, Chu Fengmian had the support of the God Pulse and endless spiritual power. He didn't need to rest at all and could traverse the void at every moment. Traversing this region would save at least half the time compared to other warriors of the same strength. As a result, the chances of encountering danger would be much lower. If this is the case, we can reach Xianzhou Ancient City in 5 days. It's fine if there aren't any accidents. Tuoba Ding sighed inwardly. Even if they didn't encounter any danger, they still had a grave expression. Obviously, they were wary of the Earth Demon sect. This was one of the reasons why many people would rather wait for the transportation formation to be repaired than traversing the void. They were worried about the dangers involved. Natural disasters and man-made disasters were all possible. The chances of encountering natural disasters were less than 1 in 100. However, man-made disasters were a different story. For example, the Earth Demon sect controlled countless areas around it. They were notorious for attacking warriors who traversed the void. Warriors who could traverse the void were all saints who were at least in the divine power realm. These Earth Demon sect disciples were aiming for the saint's blood essence. The Earth Demon sect was definitely a demon sect. The cultivation techniques they practiced were also incomparably cruel. They used the saint blood essence to cultivate. Once they encountered the Earth Demon sect's disciples, their chances of survival would be less than 1 in 10. For example, in Beimang Academy, many disciples died at the hands of the Earth Demon sect every year. Moreover, most of the deaths were because they were killed by the Earth Demon sect's disciples while traversing the void. Thus, Tuoba Ding's complexion had been extremely pale the entire time. He was worried and scared. The disciples of the Earth Demon sect were all extremely ferocious devils. As long as one was caught by them, death would be the lightest punishment. It was very likely that one would be subjected to endless torture. There seems to be some strange spiritual energy fluctuations in front of us. As Chu Fengmian traveled, he suddenly frowned and stopped. With a wave of his hand, he arrived at another space. This space should have been opened by the others who had just passed through it. However, from the looks of it, there wasn't a single person in this space. However, one could still smell the thick stench of blood in the air. Let's see what's going on. Han Yueli could not help but frown when she smelled the scent of blood. With a wave of her hand, a wave of spiritual energy shot out and condensed. In front of everyone, it turned into an ice mirror. As she activated her spiritual energy, an image appeared. This was the scene of what had just happened in the spatial passageway. A few saints could be seen traversing the passageway. Judging from the direction they were heading, it was obvious that they had come from Manyuan Ancient City and were preparing to traverse the void to Xianzhou Ancient City. This group of people were talking and laughing. However, soon, there was a fluctuation in the surrounding space. A few black-robed saints suddenly appeared. These are the disciples of the Earth Demon sect. Tuoba Ding's expression changed when he saw the black-robed saints. The black robes were the symbol of the Earth Demon sect. Indeed, this group of people had been intercepted by the Earth Demon sect. When the black-robed saints appeared, they killed all the saints in a few moves and took away their bodies. Then, the water mirror shattered. Judging from the lingering smell of blood, this had happened within the last 2 hours. As expected, the people of the Earth Demon sect will not let go of this opportunity. They have already begun to move around this area. Now that the teleportation array had been destroyed, there were so many martial artists who were preparing to go to Biming Academy to participate in the assessment. Many of them would definitely choose to traverse the void in order to save time. This gave the Earth Demon sect countless opportunities. It was enough for them to kill without restraint. After seeing this, Tuoba Ding said with lingering fear, "These people should be the elite experts of the Earth Demon sect. The leader is probably one of the sovereigns. His strength is extremely strong, comparable to the seed disciples of our Biming Academy. The seed disciples of the Biming Academy could only be promoted if their strength index reached 10. This strength had already entered the life and death realm. However, Chu Fengmian could see that the leader had not passed the life and death tribulation. However, this was even more terrifying. To have a strength index of 10 without passing the life and death tribulation was something only absolute geniuses could achieve. Let's go. If we wait here, we might be discovered by the people of the Earth Demon sect." Chu Fengmian said with a calm face. If they waited here, the people of the Earth Demon sect might discover them. It was better to continue moving. He took Tuoba Ding and Hanueli with him and activated his spiritual energy again. They continued to traverse the void and headed towards Xianzhou Ancient City. 3 days passed. Chu Fengmian had been traversing the void continuously for 3 days. If it were other warriors, they would have exhausted their strength by now. However, Chu Fengmian had the divine veins and could replenish his spiritual energy at any time. Chu Fengmian did not feel tired even after traversing the void continuously for 30 days. He was still full of energy and was in his best condition. In these 3 days, Chu Fengmian had traversed more than half of the distance. Along the way, he encountered some traces of the Earth Demon sect's disciples, but he did not encounter any of them. In these few days, the profound cold force in your body has become more flexible. If you use your full strength now, I'm afraid you can easily kill a peak saint." Chu Fengmian looked at Hanueli and said. In these 3 days, Hanueli had been cultivating. He did not improve his cultivation, but chose to control the profound cold force in his body. Chu Fengmian used the ancient battle dragon bloodline to draw out all the profound cold force in Hanueli's body. However, no matter how strong the force was, it must be controlled. In these 3 days, Hanueli had gradually gained complete control of the profound cold force. Yes, I should be able to kill an ordinary peak saint. However, if I encounter a venerable from the Earth Demon sect, I only have the confidence to fight him. I'm not sure if I can kill him. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.